Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this, your dawn safari. No. Let's start that again. Brian, could you take the camera off me? Thank you very much.
Here we go. Take two.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this, your sunset safari on the 30th of June, 2000. I'm really having an absolute nightmare today. Good afternoon. You're most welcome. You're on a live safari here in the Kruger National Park. My name's James. On camera is Brian. Well done, Brian. On the walk today is Steph. He's being filmed by David. In the final control today is Kirsten McLennan-Smith. She's being helped by Chelsea. Burn! Now, we've got that out of the way, we can start properly. You're on a live safari here in the middle of the Kruger National Park. I do apologise for my first two horrendous takes at a welcome to you. You are, of course, most welcome, and we'd love to hear from you during the course of the afternoon. Hashtag Safari Live, questions at wildearth.tv. There's a slight difference this afternoon because Steph is out on foot and we're in the vehicle. So those are the two feeds that you're going to have for the duration of the afternoon. There is a potential third feed from Jamie Patterson, but she hasn't quite managed to get into camp yet, so we'll see. It might just be the two of us. Now, we've come into this area here because this is where the cubs were this morning. Karula's two cubs, 5 months old in 2 days' time. Karula, our 12-year-old queen, the 12-year-old female leopard who provides the bulk of our leopard viewing. I can't see them. They're not where they were this morning, but I heard some sort of chewing noises through here and a few leaves dropping down onto the ground. So we're just going to have a little squiz around here, and then we're going to head down towards the south and see if we can't pick up the tracks, because her mum, their mum, Karula, did come back last night. And then she left them again, so her hunting foray yesterday was obviously unsuccessful. So what we're going to do is go a little bit further forward, turn around, and just come back and have a squiz very deeply into the middle of the bushes here, and see if we can't see the dappled fur of the little cubbies or their mum. So Herbert went out today, and he tracked Karula for quite a long way, and she'd come back here, she went off east, then she went south. I found her tracks at the junction right on our southern boundary, so I truly hope she hasn't killed something to the south of us, because then I think she will probably take the cubs, well, she will definitely take the cubs off there. So we'll just do a quick turn around here, because if they're not exactly where she left them, then chances are they have gone away with her. Now, many of you, of course, will be, as the rest of us are, in mourning at the departure of Byron Sarau. Oh, oh dear, I see. Sorry about that. I have not been hearing Kirsten McLennan-Smith. I unplugged myself by mistake. Kirsten, you may go again. Okay. So don't cry too sadly about Byron. He's all fine and he will be back to join us, I'm sure, at some stage. Let's head across to Stefan and find out what's happening on foot.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the bushwalk segment of the Sunset Safari today. For all of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. For all of you who are tuning in again, hello. And I'm Stefan Winterboer. We're on foot today around about the western side of Djuma Private Game Reserve. We decided to come out on this side. There's quite a stiff breeze blowing today, and I wanted the wind in my face to give us the best advantage when we're prowling through the bush here on foot. And we've come across this clearing. Now this clearing over here is basically just a big wet area in the summer. And what we were trying to do when you came across to us was sneak up on an emerald spotted wood dove. Now you'd imagine that sneaking up on doves is not the sort of pursuit that someone wearing khaki clothes and shoes made from dead animals does with their time. But I tell you, it's quite difficult to sneak up on these little doves. But quite pleasurable when you get it right, because of the fact that they quite often walk away from you and they've got these iridescent spots of color on their wings, and if you're lucky you can get to see them from quite close by. What I'm trying to do here is actually just figure out exactly where this little dove went. They're tiny little birds, they're probably about this big, seed-eating birds, and they've come to this area where we are standing right now primarily for the grass seeds that are falling from this particular grass here. This is one of the areas. Right, okay. Let's see if it comes back. Alright, so you've disappeared from us for a little bit. That was just due to David being a bit enthusiastic about bending over and showing you the grass over there. And for those of you, I forgot to actually say hello to David. David is our cameraman today. Alright, now back to the fact that these little birds have grass seeds. The grass seeds, and the birds are here to eat the grass of that seed. And their seeds are quite often the last to fall in the season, hence the bird being here. While we're approaching this place, why I actually came into here in the first place and then got distracted by the bird was the fact that right there is a rather unusual feature in a landscape like this, and I actually wanted to come and see what it is. I don't quite know even now. I can imagine that it's probably some sort of remnants from when the seep was still active in a little bit of a wetter time of the year. And what's happened here is an elephant probably started to dig in this area for some roots from this tree, and then the water started to well up and he left it alone. And what happened was the buffalo, who enjoy these open clearings at night time, came to lie inside this and plaster it with the mud that's all over their bellies. I think that's exactly what's happened over here. The reason why it doesn't have a clay bed is because it actually is right up against the seep line and is not down where we traditionally find them, next to the trees closer to the drainage lines. But while that's all going on, James has found what he's finally been looking for, and off you go for that. Enjoy.
Well, there we are, everybody. Brian spotted one or two spots as we drove past in the drainage line. I thought I heard chewing just before we came to see you. There is the Queen. She's brought supper home today. I don't know where the cubbies are. They're probably just down there. So let's just enjoy this view for a little while, and then we'll go around. I think we'll probably get a really good view from beneath there. Isn't that great? I think we might just spend as much of the afternoon as possible with this wonderful leopard, because I think her babies are probably just off to the left there. She was looking behind her there. I don't know what she's eating. It doesn't look very big. So maybe she sort of killed it as she came back. She definitely went off to the south at some stage. You can hear, she can hear something. This is round about where the cubs were. Let's try and gauge what she's eating. Leaves. She's eating leaves at the moment. I'm fascinated by this, Brian. I think we should go around and see if we can find out what it was. If we don't get a good view from there, everyone, we'll come back right to where we are now. It's not too far around. Just a little bit around the corner there. Oh dear, it's too far around if you drive like an imbecile, which is what I'm doing. There we go. Very exciting. It's not often that you find a leopard in the same place 3 days in a row. And then, you know, less than half a mile from where she had her last kill. Normally we'll see her for a day or two, then she disappears for 5 and we search away like mad things. Not today. We're going to milk this for everything that we have. Such a joy. Very happy to have Steffi back on foot. It means we will start to see some smaller things. And of course the challenges of being on foot around this time of the year, well, it's quite nice for tracking, it's quite nice for for viewing, because you can see through the bushes and the bush is quite thin, but it's not easy to find little things, because without the rain the insects tend to die or go dormant, and somehow Stefan Herbert managed to find an astonishing array of small winter creatures. Right, let us ease our way in here. See, somebody's been in here, I wonder. Hello, Angeline in Pretoria. How nice to hear from somebody from home. Angeline, you say, how many cubs do leopards usually give birth to? And did Karula give birth to 2 here? And were there perhaps more? It's normally 2 or 3, sometimes up to 4, and I believe that the record in captivity is probably about 8. But the chances of them maintaining a litter of 8 are completely impossible. Even 4 out here, I would suggest, is impossible. 3, just about the limit, and seldom do leopards manage to raise 3 cubs at once. It's normally only that they manage to raise 2. Now, I think we're looking in the right place here. She's just on this little island. There's the termite mound, so she should be just in front of us here. So keep an eye out for the little cubbies. See if we can find what she's eating. I am in the right place here, aren't I, Brian? She should be just here, yes. There she is, I can see her. Just in front of us there. She's going to very gingerly get in there because we are going to have to crush 1 or 2 branches, and I don't want to disturb her or the little cubs. And I must just share an incident just now with you. It will probably make you laugh quite a lot and make you wonder why we bother to be sensitive about the noise we make at all. How's that, Brian? It's alright? Right, what's she eating? Yeah, I can hear one of them's calling, and she's calling them. She's chuffing. You hear that? I wasn't calling you, madam, I promise. Listen to her calling. And one of them's eating. I can hear them eating too. Just look in the tree, maybe she stashed something. You hear her calling? Here comes a cub. There's a cub. Oh, fantastic. That's little Charlotte. She's just calling George now. I wonder if she isn't going to take them away. She's eaten something little. I don't know what that little thing was still. Just watching her quite carefully. I don't know what she's after. Looks like she's calling George. I did hear some sort of bone crunching. And so I'm sure George is eating something somewhere in here. Right, what we'll do is we're just going to move in a little bit closer to where she was sitting. This is fantastic, hey? How's this? We have been spectacularly lucky with these cubs over the last little while. The elephants really do leave a lot of branches about the place. Try and get a decent, yeah, this should be a decent view, Brian. Tell me when. Is that alright? Ah, fantastic stuff. Now, Charlotte is wandering off towards the right-hand side. She's obviously decided she wants to have a bit of a play, and now she's laying down in some deep cover. Can you imagine trying to spot that? Kirsten, how is the audio? Is it alright? Now, where is George? Georgie. Thank you, Brian, for your question. That's not Brian Joubert asking a question. Do you want to know, Brian, whether female leopards live longer than male leopards?
Oh, yes.
Okay, right. Thank you, Brian, for your question. Female leopards do actually live longer than male leopards. I don't think in captivity it makes a huge difference, but out here, absolutely. The record age of a female in this area is 17 to 18 years old. Yeah, I can hear him eating. He's in a thicket up here somewhere. And the record wild male for this area was 14. So yes, they do live a bit longer. I don't think their lives are quite as difficult because they are obviously able to protect, at least they don't have to fight for territory in quite the same way. They're normally surrounded by, yeah, I can see him. I think there's an impala in there. There is, there's a big kill in there. Oh wow, can you see where I'm looking, Brian? I'm going to sneak, I think it's going to be difficult, but I'm going to sneak a little bit forward. Might make a bit of a noise, so we'll just be a little bit careful. But a male leopard, remember, is not normally surrounded by his kin, whereas a female is. That's as far as I can go, I'm afraid. I don't know if you can get an idea there, but there's a fully grown something in there. It's a nyala. It's a nyala cow. And George is feasting. Marvellous. Right, well done. That's great news. Greedy guts Georgie's having his meal. So, George's life is going to be more difficult than his sister's. That is because, of course, male leopards have a territory encompassing 3 or 4 female territories, and that inescapably means, of course, that he is going to, there must be 3 or 4 less or fewer male leopards than there are female leopards. And so the chances of him surviving to hold a territory are that much smaller than Charlotte's. Likewise, they will normally be chased away from where they were given birth, or where their natal sort of territory, their mother's territory, whereas Charlotte will set up shop next to her mother. That means she'll be surrounded by her siblings, even though they're much older, like Shadow and Tandy. It does mean that the chances of her being killed by another leopard are very, very small. And that all combines, of course, to make life a little tough for the male leopards. That kill is more than a day old. Not more than a day, but I don't think that was killed sometime today. I think that was killed last night. I wonder if she wasn't around here. She couldn't have been, though, because they would have eaten, and she wouldn't have brought this back here. But I mean, it is in many pieces, though. Maybe they're just so hungry they've been devouring everything. Righty, we're not going to go anywhere from here. We're going to sit right where we are. Let's go back across to Steffi and see what he has to show you.
Sorry to steal you away from that leopard sighting. Isn't it amazing? Karula's managed to catch an impala or a nyala, and as long as she can keep it safe and sound, I'm sure her cubs are going to enjoy that meal for days to come. And us as well. In fact, what I wanted to show you right here, caught my eye as I walked past here, is a lizard skin that you can see that's been caught on this particular piece of stump. Now, when I first got here, I actually thought to myself that this was just what the lizard used to scrape his old skin off. Lizards are cold-blooded, and they also outgrow their skins and they shed their skins. And right here we have the discarded remnants of a lizard, but I'm not so sure anymore. If you come and have a look a little bit closer, you'll see that this skin is colored. Now, I don't actually know why this skin has got color on it, other than it can only be the fact that the lizard was de-skinned here. Have a look at that. That is definitely not a shed skin. that is a piece of a lizard, and I don't know if he got stuck here or if a bird tried to kill him here. Now, quite often what happens is around this time of the year, these lizards that live in this leaf litter and on these sticks, it's actually quite difficult for them to get away from predators because their cover has been blown. And what happens is they get caught by birds, but because they're so big and they flap around a lot, birds quite often bring them to sticks and stumps like this and will hit them against the stick or the stump, especially bushwhacks. The grey-headed bushwhack and the orange-breasted bushwhack are notorious lizard killers. And I think that is exactly what's happened here. I think what's happened is a bird has caught a lizard and has come to hammer it against this branch in the hopes of killing it. Looks like it actually got it right, because there's no other remnants of this particular lizard, and then left, leaving the skin of this lizard on the branch here to flit and fall about. And that's about the story that I have for that. It's all these little puzzles that make being on foot out here such a joy, to be quite honest. And that's what I wanted to share with you, basically. And now we're going to send you back to James and those gorgeous leopard cubs. Enjoy.
Well, nothing's happened since you've been gone, everybody. George is still feasting away. He looks like he might come down, but I don't think he's going to. And I've had a good long look at that carcass, and I don't think it's new. I don't know where she got it or how long it's been there, but I wonder if she didn't scavenge it, because it looks like it's old. All the meat is gone, and they definitely weren't eating it yesterday. So I find it quite interesting. I'm really not sure of its origins. And her tracks went a long way south today. And she wouldn't have brought it back. And I can't believe she would have just killed it as she came in today. Maybe she killed it last night here, and the cubs were just full this morning and they weren't eating. That's possible. And then, you know, she went off to mark her territory. I just find it difficult to believe that she would have left a kill in that bush there. Well, Georgie's having a fine old time. Hello, Gail in Rhode Island. You're wondering if these cubs are still suckling. They're not, Gail. They're supposed to stop at about 3 months. And we know that they're going to be 5 months tomorrow. So, I mean, look, if you read a textbook, they'll tell you they wean at 3 months. Some will wean a little bit earlier and some will wean a bit later. I think you'll find that they will try and suckle till they're about 4 months old, but by now they should be pretty much done. And you can see they are voracious meat eaters. Unless, you know what, that might be a Nyala calf. It might be a very little one. Now, Kevin, along the lines of the question we just answered about whether or not male or female live longer than each other, you want to know, when these cubs go independent, where will they go? And the answer is that the female will stay close by. She'll set up shop next to her mum. Her mum's territory will contract as a result of that, and that's absolutely fine. That's totally normal. That's how it works, and the male will have to go off somewhere else, and where that will be is unlikely to be close to where she is now, but it's not impossible that he'll set up somewhere nearby. The danger there, of course, is that there will be inbreeding when he eventually starts to breed, but that's not a train smash for the cats. Apparently 6 generations or so before they have to really worry about inbreeding. So that's the general story. We obviously don't know exactly what's going to happen though. It will be interesting to find out one day when they get a little bit older. And we do hope that they're going to both survive to independence. She certainly has an excellent record of raising cubs, does Karula. And I think, yeah, I mean, this is probably her second last litter of cubs if she raises them to independence. She's probably got enough time in her for one more after this, and then her day will be done. A highly successful life well lived, I'd say. Hello HK, nice question from you, and it's one that you're going to be surprised by the answer to. You say, which animal is the biggest threat to a leopard cub? HK, the biggest threat to a leopard cub is an unrelated male leopard. So were Mvula, or were the Anderson male, or perhaps even Quarantine and Gunuma, although they are also Karula's sons, but any unrelated male leopard that came into the area would kill these cubs. 80%, I'll say that again, 80% of cub mortality is caused by unrelated males and infanticide. They're probably slightly beyond that age now. You know, they're able to climb trees and get away, and I suspect that, you know, the fact that they will move with her at the moment would probably deter a male leopard from having a go, but it is still a threat. Then you'd probably say hyenas were probably the next greatest threat to these little cubs. And after that, lions. Lions will not tolerate any other predators. If they can get hold of them, they will kill them. And of course, a lion there's almost no risk to a lion attacking a leopard, or attacking a leopard cub, or attacking a hyena, unless there are lots of hyenas with it, because lions are so much bigger, so much stronger, and they work in teams. So they really are completely dominant over everything else, all things being equal. Just try and give you an idea of the atmosphere around us. There's a breeze blowing from the northwest. The northwest is now to the left-hand side of your screen, or sort of through and to the left of your screen, if you like, and we're sheltered by this huge drainage line we're in. It's a lovely bank that we're based there. She's sort of lying against the bank there, and she's sheltered from the breeze. It's quite a stiff northwester, and I think it's bringing some quite hot weather. It's about 25 degrees Celsius, 77 Fahrenheit. So for midwinter it's a pretty good day, really. And there's no smell coming off that carcass, and I suspect that's because it can't be old. So maybe it's just a young nyala that she killed, and they've just had all day to eat it. And so all I can hear is the rustling of this wind through the tops of these, what we call false thorn or albizia trees, just above us. And of course the odd crunch as George bites down on a bone. He's having the best afternoon, you can see. It's warm, his mum is here, his sister's not trying to take food from him, and he's got almost a full baby nyala to devour. Alright, we're going to stay right here. Let's head across to Steffi. He's got something fun to show you. Well, not fun for the wildebeest.
Now, from a pretty fresh kill to a pretty old kill, oh, look at this piece of dried wildebeest. This is mainly just skin and a little bit of bone over here. It looks like a little bit of the thoracic vertebrae, or the spinal column that's at the top of the chest cavity, because this still has some of these wide blades on the side that will eventually become ribs, as far as I can see. What killed it and did it die here was the question that I had as I walked up to it. I'm still trying to decide whether or not it was killed right where it is now, or whether this piece was brought here by hyena. But I must be honest, one of the clues I had is when you stand up and you have a look at this area that this piece of carcass is living in. You can see that the grass here is slightly different. It's slightly different. You can almost see the edge here where the stick is going. I'm standing almost in the middle of it, all the way out to here. there seems to be a darker color. Now generally what that's from is from the tummy contents of the wildebeest would have been messed in this area when the lion killed this particular wildebeest. That is also very wet, it contains a lot of moisture, and what that would do, it would actually feed the grass underneath it. A lot of fertilizer, a lot of different types of nutrients that come into the soil, and the grass actually gets better underneath the kill. For a short time, obviously it's had a long time to dry out, but you can see the remnants here. If you just follow me onto a patch that didn't have a kill on it, have a look where I'm standing now. You can see that it's very sandy, and if you come and stand this side of me, you'll actually see that on the other side of this particular patch of ground, it's sandy again. So I absolutely think that it was killed here. Because it was killed here and the tummy contents are lying right here, I think that it was lions or hyena that killed this particular wildebeest, with a possibility of it actually being a hyena kill. And why I say that is because we're right close to the den site on Albury's Road, and we're basically between the two den sites on Albury's Road and the one on Shortcut Gallagher, and there would be a lot of hyena activity here, a lot of groups of hyena here, and a group of hyena is quite capable of taking something as large as a wildebeest. It doesn't necessarily only have to be that of a lion. When you're looking at one-on-one, a lion hunts prey in the range of about 100 pounds to about 1,000 pounds. Whereas a hyena hunt prey slightly lower in weight than that, but what they do is they can hunt in packs, large packs. Up in East Africa, I've seen hunting packs of hyena numbering up to 50, taking down full-grown bull buffalo at 1,500 pounds, 1,600 pounds, and doing it when they themselves only weigh 100 pounds to 150 pounds, 200 pounds maximum for a big hyena. Isn't it amazing? So I think that is possibly it. One of the larger predators, lion or hyena. I suppose if I had to bet on it, like what is it actually going to be, it would probably be lion. But with a possibility of it being hunted by a hyena right here, because we're between those two den sites. So that would be an outside guess, a money guess, for lack of a better word. Alrighty, we're going to carry on. Welcome Monique, welcome to the walk, and you've asked me, have I ever found an elephant's toenail on walk? Monique, I can't say that I've ever found an elephant's toenail on a walk, no. I found an elephant's tusk. James and I were on a walk the other day and we managed to find an elephant tusk, which I successfully refound again some weeks later. As to an elephant toenail, let me answer you seriously. Yes, I found an elephant's toenail. The elephant's foot, when they die, comes off almost as a pad, like a shoe basically, and the nails are part of that shoe. And I found dead elephant or elephant carcasses with their shoes off or their feet off, containing the toenail. But as to a toenail clipping, well, I'm sure you were asking about, no. Oh, isn't this wonderful? We've got a weeping boer bean on top of a termite mound, and you can see that it's definitely a weeping boer bean growing on top of the termite mound, not the termite mound around the boer bean. But enough of that, something exciting is happening at that leopard. Enjoy.
Well, there is Charlotte. Charlotte has just passed out. She is absolutely comatose. I have yet to manage to take anything resembling a useful photograph. Karula is just over there. She is lying down. She is also comatose. George, however, is gorging himself. You like how I did that? George is gorging. Very
the
good.
alliteration is
yes,
amazing.
it's stunning stuff. And that's the state of play here. Now we're going to punch in on Charlotte's face quickly. There we go. Pa-pow. You can see her little brown eyes fast asleep. So full of baby Nyala. She is so deeply contented lying there, knowing that her mum is on security detail. Her mother's eyes flicker open all the time, just looking around. Every time there's a suspected sniff on the air of anything, her head lifts and she looks around. The joys of childhood, Brian, hey? Remember when you used to sleep like that?
I do.
Viv, very good question, and it's a logical one, and I don't think there's any one answer to it. We were chatting about territories earlier on. We were chatting about the fact that the females sort of eat or carve out a territory in their mother's territory, and you say, does it not mean that the territories eventually get smaller and smaller, and so Karula would eventually not have a territory? Well, yes, it does, but by that time she's normally too old to hold a territory anymore. It also, I think what also happens is that other leopards from around the place get squeezed. There is some overlap, and certainly down at Londolozi on the Sand River, where I have, it's my only other experience of this concentration of leopards, you'll find quite a lot of overlap in the territories, and they are smaller because they can contain more leopards, because there is more for them to eat along the riverbanks. So yes, the territories will get smaller. Remember, she's produced now, these are her 8th cubs, if she raises them to independence, if I'm not mistaken, 8th or 10th. Only 5 of those will be females, and as far as I know, we've got Shadow and Tundi down to the south. They were her first litter. They're right next door to her. There's one of them up in the north. What's it? It was Misho, or who's the other one? Do you remember, Brian? I don't remember. So we were looking at sort of 4 or 5 female leopards, and yes, her territory is enormous still. It's absolutely huge, and they've eaten away little bits and pieces, and they've pushed out, sort of increased the space that her family occupies, and there'll be conflict, and leopards die. We've just had the death of Kwatila to the south of us. You may find that Shadow enters that territory. You may find that Tundi also uses some of that. We've certainly found that Karula, once she had these little babies, has been moving around far more towards the south, where she didn't before, or certainly not while I've known her. So these leopard territories do shift for sure, and I guess they do get smaller and smaller as she has to give way, but then she will pass on and shake off this mortal coil, and the area will become larger again. All is completely at peace here. Let's go a little bit forward again and see Brother George. I'm also going to have to, unfortunately, announce this on the Game Drive radio, so we might not be here for the whole of the drive. I'd be very reticent to call it in if it was just the cubs, but I must call in with the mum here. Let's do a maneuver like this and try and get a little bit closer in. Right, I'm going to go as far as I can onto this tambotai tree. You've got no view there of Brother J, eh? G, sorry. No. Little bit. I think he's going to come out eventually. Andrew, come in. Isn't that nice? That's so cool. And that's really cool to watch a leopard like that, I think. Simply because, we've seen him out in the open, but it gives you an idea of how difficult they are to spot, and of course how lucky we are to see them out in the open, how brilliantly camouflaged they are, and you can see exactly why they're the colour they are. That's the kind of habitat in which they thrive, and the best part of that picture is the fact that he's just managed to find a couple of rays of sun that are coming through the bushes onto him. I think that's wonderful. Just brilliant stuff. And Ellie, while we watch him gorge himself, and he really is absolutely macerating that young nyala, you say, how much do they have to eat every day? Nelly, it doesn't, it's difficult to say, because it really depends on what they've eaten the day before. So 2 days ago, they ate a duiker, and that took them 2 days to complete. She's killed this again, and she went hunting almost immediately after they finished that duiker. But it just depends what they kill. So I think a young nyala like this, if she hoists it and she doesn't lose it, I think will probably last them 3 or 4 days. The duiker maybe 3 days. If she kills a full-grown male impala, well, that'll last them 5 days at least. So it really just depends on what they kill. And I mean, they can go a few days without food. She can definitely go 3 or 4 days, 5 days if she has to without food. So they're not like us. They don't have to have 3 squares a day, if you know what I mean. Now Aaron in New Zealand, I guess you're wondering how far away they are from the Djuma Cam. Well, I don't guess that. You've asked that. You've said, how far are they from the Djuma Cam? Aaron, they are, as the crow flies, let me just work it out, I'd say about 600 meters, maybe 800 meters, so half a mile from us. Yeah, 800 meters as the crow flies, which is not far, but even with the super zoom on that camera, you ain't going to see them down here in this drainage line. Isn't that an amazing shot? I just think that's incredible. Look at his little teeth. They wouldn't feel so little if they were clamped around your wrist, but at the moment they look very cute. Brian and I were just having a discussion yesterday. Brian said to me, we were watching just the two of them up in a tree. Brian says to me, what do you think would happen if we just sort of tried to pluck one out of the tree there? And, when they're sitting on their own and they're looking up at you with their little eyes, so one set of copper eyes and one set of greeny blue ones, it looks like they'd sit on your lap and purr. If you were to catch one of these leopard cubs by hand, you would know all about it. You'd have scratches and bites all over you, more than you could count, within less than half a minute. They would go ballistic. They are absolutely wild, and there must never be any mistaking that. Even though we can get so close to them, we can come and be within. I mean, Karula is now sitting 5 meters from us, 5 or 6 meters from us. That's about 18 feet, maybe 20 feet. Brian's camera will actually tell us how far she is away from us. Exactly. And she's just habituated to the vehicle.
It's about 15 meters.
15?
Yeah.
Okay, she's a bit further away from us than I thought. Anyway, she's close, and she's not in the slightest bit affected by us, but that's not because she's tame. She's habituated to the vehicles, she's habituated to our presence, she's habituated to the sound of our voices. If I was to get out of this car, it would be an entirely different situation. Very nice, Brian.
Oh,
Snake. Right, so Raisa, thank you very much for sorting that out. You say she's had 6 males and 4 female cubs. So almost a 50-50 ratio. That's fantastic, and she does have the fluffiest belly. Some might say slightly saggy, but I wouldn't, obviously, because I know that would result in a Twitter backlash. So 4 females and 6 males. That is a really impressive record, I've got to tell you. So these ones are, these ones live to independence. That will be 10 cubs raised to independence. That's a really good return for an animal that lives 14 years. In fact, it's astonishing. There's little Charlotte. Now, while we watch them sleeping, it seems an appropriate time for me to tell you the story of what happened the other day when we were watching them. At the end of the drive, Brian and I had enjoyed many hours of great sighting with Karula and the youngsters, and we just had those elephants coming to our favourite herd of elephants, the third trunk female, walking through with her 4 offspring, or her 3 offspring, and they walked through the sighting, and you went off air, and we were feeling great about ourselves, and one of the bushwalk landowners pulled into the sighting, and I waved at him, and then I went to start the car, looking forward to a very pleasant breakfast of coffee and perhaps fried eggs, and thinking how wonderfully we'd done in the morning. And as these thoughts were all coming across me and relaxing my mind, I reached for the key and turned it. At which point an incredibly loud noise began to emanate from the bonnet of the vehicle. It was the hooter, that is, in American parlance, the horn, and the horn started going beep, 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 astoundingly loudly. I didn't know what to do. I kept trying to start the engine wouldn't start. We couldn't stop this horrible noise going. The people on the other vehicle went, I'm sorry, I don't know. Beep, 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 beep. Brian was looking around like this. I quickly turned and I flipped. I ripped the seat off the car because that's where the battery was, and I was going to tear the wires off the battery. It was so embarrassing. And eventually I managed to push a button on the key and it shut off. I thought the leopards would have disappeared. I looked round. They hadn't moved an inch. George, I think, had looked up over the top of the termite mound and was sort of surveying the scene with disdain. And as the sound stopped, he put his head back down and went to sleep. She didn't move in the slightest. So, we drive around here and we don't want to make too much noise, don't want to crunch this and crunch that. Whisper, whisper. Beep, beep, beep. Didn't react at all. Brian, an amusing incident.
Fantastic.
Yes. And I was the bushwalk landowners, I'm not sure who they were, but they weren't, they weren't in the flush of youth. And they were all very properly dressed, and, good binoculars, good cameras. They were very sort of, they were proper safari people, And to have had that noise in the middle of their morning leopard sighting, I don't think was wonderful for them. Anyway, I apologize to them and try not to do it again. Right, Steph is apparently staring into a tree, wistfully thinking about climbing it and possibly going to avoid it, given the injury he did to himself last time.
James is away with words. I was actually just having a look at the way that this elephant has managed to peel the bark off of this albizia here. Now, I come to this particular patch of albizias, and I'm going to show you why in a second. But not only is it the patch of the largest albizias that we have on the property, but it also is one of James's favorite trees, this common albizia. And what caught my eye was firstly the way that this elephant had just managed to peel off just 2 slabs. One here, not very big, and one here, another one. And then it looks like started to tusk this piece off, and you can actually see where the tusk was used as almost a prying iron to get this off, and then they would have grabbed this with the tip of their trunk and pulled it, and the bark would have come off in a strip very similar to this. After which the elephant then rolls it up basically and puts it in the mouth and chews it up. Bark, relatively nutritious. All the nutrients that the tree makes and uses is transported between the outside bark and the woody part of the tree, in a thing called the cambium layer. And that is what the elephant are after, in particular in the dry season. Up to 80% of their diet is made up of these trees, woody branches and bits and pieces of bark and leaves, not of grass. Grass at this time of the year very dead, and it needs to come alive again before the elephants start to eat it. Now, this is why I come to this patch. Have a look at this giant albizia tree. Now, that isn't its real name. Its real name is the common albizia. And what is quite unique about the albizias is that, unlike most of its counterparts out here, it doesn't have any thorns. You can quite safely stick your hand into these bushes and you can not get poked by anything, which is uncommon. Most things here have big thorny branches, and this particular tree I just enjoy spending time around because this particular tree has been standing here for probably 300 or 400 years. Can you imagine that? And imagine what it's seen come and go in its 300 or 400 year existence in this particular patch of bush. Now come and look here, something just caught my eye over your shoulder, and it's a nest of some sort. Have a look inside here. Now, only large birds build large nests like that, other than the weavers. And I'm almost certain that if we go and have a look at this nest, we probably won't find that it's very deep. In actual fact, no, let me see if I can bend it over. It's not in use at the moment, so don't worry, I'm not disturbing anything. Come and have a look inside there. If you have a look up here, you'll actually see that the nest has been woven out of bits and pieces of tendril, not really grass so much as thin sticks and twigs and bits and pieces of bark. And this, I have a fair assumption, is a cuckoo's nest. I've seen them once or twice on nests this large, and I think that is a cuckoo's nest. But just have a look at how big this actually is. Incredible, eh? What an amazing construction. At least this one isn't in the top of the tree. The last time I had a nest on the bushwalk, I managed to get and fall out of the top of a tree, hacking my leg open, which has taken some time to heal. You can see, not that I'm looking for your sympathy at all, but I'm just very glad that isn't in the top of this albizia. Let's go and have another look. This area is just crisscrossed with game paths, and the reason for that is that we're quite close to Sydney's dam. We're probably about a mile away from Sydney's dam, which holds quite a lot of water, and this time of the year animals are going to and from their feeding areas to water sources like Sydney's dam and back again to their feeding areas, all in the space of a day and a night. Most animals here drink exactly that, drink every day if they can. There's very few really drought hardy animals where we are here. I would say the most drought hardy animal that we have here is probably the steenbok, if I were to guess. I think I'll stick with that. Let's see, my memory banks are being joggled over there. Is a steenbok, absolutely. That's probably the most drought resistant of all the little antelope species that we have, and luckily quite common. This is a beautiful tree. Now, for me to stand any closer would mean that Dave has to point the camera into the sun, which will blind you as much as it blinds me and him. And so we won't be going around. But just to give you an idea of the scale of this tree, let me go stand next to it. Have a look at that. Generally speaking, they're not bigger than this, sometimes small little shrubs. To give you an idea of how truly ginormous this actual tree is. Nice stories to tell, eh? Anyway, let's carry on going. Got some game paths to walk on to go and see. James Richards, while I'm busy looking at what this is, and while I'm busy looking at this, I'm going to answer your question. James Richards has just asked me a question about which bird species has the most impressive nest. I would have to say that it's probably the hammerkop bird, the hammerhead bird. It's a quite indistinct brown bird, about as big as a small chicken. They build nests out of mainly bits and pieces of driftwood that they find in areas close to riverbeds. And they build a nest big enough for me to stand on, big enough for a 150, 180 pound man to stand on top of. But they don't nest on top of it, they actually nest in it. And there's a little tunnel and there's a nesting chamber. And on the inside of that nesting chamber, they plaster the walls. Can you imagine that? So this ginormous nest that's got a chamber on the inside with plastered walls. I don't know of another bird that builds anything quite so similar in Africa. Of course, the most impressive nests in the world are those made by the bowerbirds of Indonesia, the Philippines, and I think Australasia, somewhere around North Australia, New Zealand, somewhere, the bowerbirds. But this is exactly what that nest of that kukul was made of, and it's some other type of bark fiber. And you can see what's happened is the kukul has taken a strand of it and then was weaving that nest with this strand. Quite a handy thing to have out here. I can't imagine that I'd be able to use this as a bit of rope or anything like that. I think I wouldn't trust myself to this particular one. Anyway, we're going to carry on our game path. And I'm sure you want to get back to those beautiful leopard cubs of yours. I'm very jealous.
Well, there is the one beautiful little leopard cub. She's managed to stick her head up. Look, there's high action here. She's yawning. She's been cleaning her feet. Fastidiously clean she is already at her young age. Her brother continues to eat like a pig. I suppose eat like a hungry leopard cub would be a more accurate way of saying it. Oh, high action here. Brian, are you ready?
I am ready.
She's going to move. Yeah, goodness gracious me, there's movement. Fantastic. And this is just a little bit of playing and exploring that she's doing. Maybe making her way back up towards the kill. Maybe she'll ask George to make a little bit of space for her. I'm sure she's hungry. I can hear him. He's coming down. Is he? Yeah, he's coming down. I'm just going to... I don't know what to do, whether we should move or stay. Here he comes. He's with his mum. Hello, George. Let me sneak forward, everyone. No, now George is moving. It's almost impossible to work out what they're going to do. You got him, Brian? He's just heard his sister. That's why he's swung round like that. Isn't he cool? George. Gotcha. He's so cool. The light in his eyes. He's so lovely. Look at him. Okay, now let's note that 3 spots. Please remember this, everybody, because I keep forgetting. I think he's 3 and 3, but I've probably forgotten. Look at his eyes. And what's he got that side? Oh, you can't. Right, you can't see. You see his eyes have changed colour, I think, slightly. He's going back now. Oh, there we go, now we can see. See, he's 3 and 3. So he's 3-3, and she's got a little, almost, of course, I'm sure most of you remember Cindy Crawford. She had that very artfully placed mole just below her nose. And Charlotte's almost got the same sort of thing. She's 3 on one side and 4 on the other. And the 4th spot, if I remember correctly, is just below, or just above the other 3. So if you're wondering what on earth I'm talking about, it's those spots there just below the nose. There, you can see the 3 of them. Just below the nose, above the whisker line, you can see 3 spots there for George. That is unique to each leopard. His mum is 3-4. She's got 3 on her right, our left when we look at her face, and 4 on the other. And he is 3 on both. And even though he's a young male, he is a cat, and therefore he is fastidiously clean. And that's not just because they want to be clean, everybody. That's so that they don't leave the scent of carrion and blood and gore and guts. They don't want anything to know where they are. They are a very secretive bunch. And I can just hear the gentle chewing of Charlotte. HK, you want to know if they hear us speaking? Yes, absolutely. They've got fantastic ears. They've got brilliant ears. So they absolutely hear us speaking. But in the same way that they don't react when we move the vehicles or set the hooter off, they are used to us. So if they were to hear my voice for the first time, I'm sure they would have been a bit nervous. I think I'm of the opinion, and this might be entirely wrong, that leopards actually are able to recognize individual voices, I suspect. Certainly the tone. What do you think, Brian?
Definitely.
And I don't think they're the only ones. I think lots of animals can. And I say that, the only reason I say that is because, I mean, some animals react differently to some people. And I don't know if it's a tone of the voice kind of a thing. And certainly you know that when you speak to your dog knows your voice, your cat knows your voice. So I'm pretty sure, I've got no reason to believe that these animals wouldn't be able to recognize us in the same way. And likewise, you know how your domestic animals react to some people differently from the way they react to others. Cannot get hold of Andrew here. Kirsten, I'm going to ask you to get hold of Steph, if you don't mind, and ask him to call on the Game Drive radio. Andrew, I can't get hold of him on the radio. Andrew, did you copy Andrew? I've got him now, Kirsten, don't worry about it. Andrew, sorry, I've been trying to get hold of you since you got mobile. Karula's on lock here with the 2 cubs, same place from this morning. Cool, copy that. He's not going to come immediately. He seems to be the only other person mobile, which is the best. So it means we can sit here on our own. Now, I believe there are lots and lots of screenshots of young Georgie here. I'd love to know what you think of his little name, because it won't last. Just to reiterate that George and Charlotte are the names I've given them, based on the British royal family's 2 youngest members, George and Charlotte. Now, Aaron in New Zealand, you're a thinker, and you said to me, what will happen to the territories of these leopards if, for example, Tingana was to bite it? So if Tingana was to be killed by a rival male leopard, or perhaps bitten by a snake, as poor old Quatile was, what would happen? I think what you'll find, Aaron, is that, well, there are a few candidates to take over his territory. Quarantine. Kunuma seems to have moved off. Quarantine is at is sitting around somewhere around Nkoro and around Cheetah Plains, so he could take over the territory. We think that Quarantine and Kunuma are Mvula's offspring. Mvula's moved out. Then there's Gajima, who's that unrelaxed male leopard from Buffelshoek. He could easily come in here. The Anderson male would probably push in further from the west, so he'd come further east. And basically, I mean, it's a pretty ripe... Tingana's, I mean, he's in the prime of his life, and his territory, as far as I'm aware, has never been larger than it is now. But were he to vacate that, I think you'd probably find that it would be squeezed from all sides. I don't know who the dominant male is to the south of us, and I heard rumour the other day that one of the big males, called the airstrip male at Mala Mala, he took a pasting from Kunuma, and he also apparently was killed by 2 young male lions the other day. Now that, of course, means that there will be a gap up there, down there, around Mala Mala. That's to the south of us, just behind where Brian's sitting. And I suspect then that maybe Kunuma will take over there. He's still very young to be taking over a territory, though. So it really is an interesting one, and I don't know. What happened to, I think there was another Karula male offspring, Misho, or Mia? Makes sense, yeah, Mishu. And he, I think, is somewhere around northern Buffelshoek into the Kruger. He might wander back this way. Who knows? Tingana, of course, comes all the way from Lion Sands. It could be that a totally unrelated male comes knocking about here at some stage and just finds the place without an owner, if you like, and takes over. It's fascinating to think about what might happen there. Right, George has now gone to sleep, obviously. His mother is asleep. Oh goodness, now I'm being tested, and I'm going to pass this on to our more expert viewers. You want to know who Karula's mother was, and did she take this territory? Or where was her territory? Her territory would have been around here somewhere, but I've forgotten who her mother was. I have read it probably 7 or 8 times, but I've forgotten it. I think, as Kirsten is saying to me, it was probably the leopard called Safari. Now, that was a long time ago. I have no idea where her territory was. I don't think very good records were kept back then. Karula, of course, is now 12, so that's some time back. And yeah, I don't know exactly. Her territory would have been around here somewhere. But certainly, I know the Arathusa guys have talked about Safari. And I can just hear the gentle chewing sounds of Charlotte eating her meal. Georgie looking up with his big fat belly. He's obviously quite tired now, having eaten so much. Well, I'm very, very glad. Thank you, everybody, for agreeing that George and Charlotte are good names for these leopards. Like I say, they won't last, but I think they're quite fun, mainly because it pokes fun a little bit at those who take the naming of leopards so very seriously. Because, of course, to a leopard, they don't really care what they're called, do they? Viam's names, of course, were Dark Shadow and Demon Slayer. Those are the 2 names he wanted to call these leopards. Mercifully, I think we've managed to dissuade anybody from calling either of the leopards Dark Shadow and Demon Slayer. I would find it extremely difficult to call this leopard Dark Shadow or Demon Slayer. And Pinchy Weiner, thank you very much for your... haven't heard from you a while, haven't seen you for a while. Pinchy Weiner, I hope that... thank you very much for the information you've given us. You say that Safari was indeed Karula's mother. Pinchy Weiner, for those of you who don't know, everybody, is a freshwater crab, I'm not joking, that lives, or lived, we're not sure if he's shaken off this mortal coil, if the Twitter handle is coming from the ether or actually from the burrow of Pinchy Weiner on Rebecca's Road. His burrow was tragically sat upon by a buffalo, and we're not sure whether he survived or not. And he's yet to tell us on Twitter whether he's talking to us from his burrow or from the ether. What do you think, Brian?
Maybe he moved house.
You think he moved house?
I think he moved house.
Okay. Alright, let's head across to Steph and find out what he is achieving in the wilderness this afternoon.
On what I'm achieving. I'm not achieving much. I'm ambling my way through this thicket on top of the sandy patch. And just have a look around us at how absolutely devastated the grass cover is. I was just explaining now to Dave how I thought to myself, I think that these elephant, once the grass fields that grow around the Sabi Sands on a type of rock type called I think it's the basalts, or the gabbros at least anyway, I think the elephant are going to leave here. I think we've got an overabundance of elephant now because there's a lot of pumped water and there's a lot of woody species of plant around us. Not too much grass, and so this makes for a good winter refuge. But I think as soon as we see the grass fields around us start to bloom, I think we're going to actually have no elephants on this property. I predict that we're going to have an elephant drought here between about December and March. So for those of you who watch the show religiously, mark those words and let's see if I'm right or wrong. But now, once again, just over your shoulder, I've managed to spy something that catches my eye. And right here, on this little branch right here, you'll notice that there's some red sand, it looks like, on this branch. And what I'm expecting when I get there is to decide what has made this. Alright, now, if you come and have a look over here, see if you can guess at what this is. I'm going to give you a clue. It is not termites. Have a look here. The cylindrical nature of these is the key, and then the fact that it is bound together with silk. And when you lift the silk, you can see that the bark has been chewed. Now what this is, everybody, it's caterpillar frass. Now, I didn't understand what caterpillar frass was the first time I was told it either, but this is the droppings of a caterpillar. The caterpillar lives under a house made up of silk and his own droppings, which protect him from birds that basically see this as a termite mound. Now, of course, termites have soldiers. Soldiers have teeth. Those teeth are sharp. They're quite formidable. And what this caterpillar is doing is making the most out of the association of termites over here. In actual fact, it's just a caterpillar that's made a house out of his own droppings and silk, and then is eating the bark. And this is the result. Caterpillar frass. Isn't that amazing? And of course, when this particular species of caterpillar has digested enough wood and enough nutrients from below the wood and has built up enough fat reserves, it will then pupate and it will become either a moth or a butterfly. Probably a moth, just judging from this time of the year. And quite often it's the moths who have these massive caterpillars that take a long time to build up enough nutrients and enough fat so that it can pupate and come out as a big fatty moth that then flies around. Nice, eh? Alrighty, let's carry on through our moonscape. Marisha, while I'm busy having a look at this, I'm going to answer your question. Hello, and Marisha, for those of you who are watching with us, came and visited us over here, and I just want to say hello, Marisha, welcome back to the walk. Now this is a gall. And two things create galls, gall wasps and gall midges. And this was probably a gall wasp. And what happened is that a wasp came along, landed on the branch last year. No, but this was probably 2 years ago. Stung the tree with her stinger and injected a growth hormone into the plant. And what the plant did was it then had this explosive, almost like a cancerous growth, a gall, on the branch, and inside the gall was the wasp's pupa. The wasp pupa then ate the inside of this gall, the fibrousy plant tissue, and then pupated, and then would have chewed its way out of that gall. Now, very often with this story is you have a sinister character, and that sinister character is quite often also a wasp, will then lay its egg on the larvae of this wasp. Its egg will pupate first and then eat that youngster alive. And I think that's exactly what happened. When I turn this upside down, inside there you can see a caterpillar, or what's left of one. And I think that that is the remnants of this particular parasite. Isn't it amazing? Yeah, there we go, you can see. Yeah, I've got it shaking it out a little bit. So just to go over that again, because it's something that not even our sci-fi directors are getting right at the moment in terms of its magnitude. A little wasp came along, stung the tree. The tree then had a cancerous growth. Inside this cancerous growth was that wasp's baby. Another wasp came along, knew that this was happening, put her ovipositor into this piece of wood and laid its egg on that wasp's baby. Her egg then hatched and her baby ate the other baby while alive, all in non-essential tissues first, grew up faster using the other one's baby's basically flesh, and then came out leaving a hole in the gall and the leftover meal. Horrifying. Anyway, on that macabre note, back to James, who's full of the joys of life.
I am so full of the joys of life. That isn't a leopard, but it's a fly. Watch what it does. See the ants? Watch this beastly fly. Look at it. Look. It's eating ants. It's a fly catching ant. It's an ant catching fly. And it's gorging itself in the same way that these leopards have been eating. I've no idea what kind of a fly it is, other than to say it's an ant-eating fly. Sitting there, it's found itself a trail where the ants are going up and down. They seem to be completely unconcerned by it, unaware that it's there, unaware that their friends are being picked off the line. Look. You know what I think it's doing? You know how I think it finds these things? They leave a trail of... See, it moves off the trail. They leave a trail of scent that I think they follow. That's how they follow each other. And watch how the fly comes onto the scent trail, and then it books off it. So it doesn't sit in the middle of the trail waiting for them. It stays to the side. I think this is probably a lot more delicate than we think it is. Although the ants seem to be utterly oblivious to the fact that they're about to be devoured by that beastly thing. That is absolutely spectacular to see. Let's see if the anties come back. It looks like they don't want to come back. There's one. Oh, here comes one. Oh, two. Watch him. Or her, or it. I mean, it's a little bit like watching that viral video of the lioness watching the wildebeest go past until the male leaps in and catches one. She watches about 300 of them go past before a male loses patience and just jumps in and catches one. One wonders what this fly is selecting for, why they aren't all fair game. Perhaps they're not all giving off a scent. Perhaps she can't see them. And it's, you know, she has to kind of almost pick them up through the vibrations they're making or something like that. Absolutely incredible stuff. The leopards are still doing the same as they were before, so don't worry about that. We haven't left them. We aren't going to leave them. He's so confused. Come on. Make another kill. I think this is just too spectacular. I'll try and find him in a book. But I don't know what kind of fly that is, other than to say it's a vicious ant-eating fly. Have you ever seen a fly like that, Brian?
No, never. I've never even considered flies eating ants.
No, nor have I. And I also think I've definitely seen a fly like that. They're kind of without colour. But I've never known them to be ant-eating. That said, very few people choose to go into the intricacies of fly biology as a career, and I certainly wouldn't be one of them. Oh, now suddenly that's obviously choice red ant material. Delicious. And he's now very satisfied. Now waiting again for another choice specimen to go wandering past. What is going on here? Karula just got up. Don't know what she picked something up.
Yeah, scrap file.
Ah, look at that. Georgie, or Charlotte, dropped a piece, and she's now going to sit on the bonnet here and eat it. Even I might be able to get a picture from here, Brian. Now, please excuse my head, everyone. I'm just going to look where she is. She is right here. I don't really want to start the car. I suppose I could. Let me just start and move back a bit. I think she might get a little fright, but hopefully not. Sorry, my girl. No, she's fine. Is that alright, Brian? Or is that hopeless? I've hit a tree, everyone. I can't move from here. There she is. I don't know exactly what Charlotte dropped there. But there is Karula devouring a little piece of stuff that her daughter dropped down the hill. Oh, here comes Charlotte. I don't think you'll be able to see her there. Going back up again. Isn't this wonderful? I mean, I can't really think of a better way to spend a Thursday afternoon, can you, Brian?
Yeah. And eating flies.
And eating flies. Leopards all over the place. Gracie, you have just asked a wonderful, wonderful question. You say, why can't baby George and Charlotte keep their names? Gracie, it's one of these things about the world of adults, I'm afraid, that is going to be a mystery for many years to come for you, and indeed it still is to me. Gracie, it's mainly because everybody wants the chance to give these animals a name. So, for example, Brent found them. Brent doesn't really care either, but people out here are very enthusiastic about. They love to give animals names, and it's considered a real honor. Do you know what that means, Gracie? It's considered a real honor to be able to name the leopards. And so some people take it very, very seriously, and so then they think they should be able to choose the names. And I didn't find these leopards. I've just, spent some time around them, so I just enjoyed them. And so my name doesn't really count as much as somebody who's worked in this area for a bit longer than I have. But that's why, Gracie. But it's a good question, because remember, they don't really care what their names are, do they? George, you greedy guts. You've had enough to eat today? George? He wants to go and get some from his mum. He's so sweet. Look at him thinking about it. I'm continue to be amazed, everybody, by how unplayful these cubs are. I've never seen this before. It might be that I just don't remember being around leopard cubs. But I'm amazed by the fact that they don't play a bit more than they do. Brian, do you remember when, I mean, I suppose Quarantine and Konuma were already, what, almost a year old when you met them?
Yeah.
You remember them playing at all? Not really.
Not really, no.
So, I mean, they're aware of each other, obviously, and he came and he greeted his mum and they had a bit of a hug and then he just left her. And maybe that's just a function of the fact, I think it is just a function of the fact that they're leopards. They are by default solitary. And as soon as they're able to, they'll go off on their own. Whereas the juxtaposition with lions could not be greater. Oh, he's such a sweet fella. Raisa, you said this is the first time you've seen them so close and therefore it's a good time to start learning their spots. I agree. I don't know if it's a fault of my psychology or my brain, but I find it difficult to see their spots other than the ones under the nose. But many of you have picked out an amazing array of obviously different markings on all the leopards around here. So yes, please, Raisa, and anyone else, see if you can spot some obvious sort of spot patterns that they have on the back of the ears, perhaps like that one on the back of his left ear there. As he listens to my voice, that might be a fly. I think it's a fly. Do you think it's an ant-eating fly?
Could very well be.
He's hungry still, you know. He's looking up towards where his sister's eating. He's looking at his mum. Ryan, I'm going to ease forward slightly. No, I can't, can I? I'm parked on the tree there. Now I'm going to stay right here. I can see, you might actually be able to see Charlotte up there if you look. She's through there. Oh, the golden light's just catching her fur. Up a bit. I think we'll get her. I can just see the light catching her golden fur. There you go. It's a brilliant shot, Brian. That's an award winner, isn't it?
Best yet.
Oh, look at the way the colour bolts out of that shade once the sun hits her. This is the best. Alright, Stefan Winterboer has also found an insect, and I would like you all to tell him about the ant-eating fly.
An ant-eating fly indeed. I must be honest, today is one of these days for the weird and the wonderful. And we found something extra special for you. And I'm telling you, the only reason we saw it was because this little guy has been trying to hide out on a stick that's not 100% suited to his camouflage. Let's see if we can bring you around this side of the tree and have a look at this. Now, until I got my head right up to this, I didn't actually even know what it was. It has the appearance of a fly, but in actual fact, it's a grasshopper. Now, I'm constantly amazed at the ability of these insects to try and stay still and as camouflaged as possible, but two, try and disguise their identity. And what this grasshopper hasn't wanted to do is obviously make itself known as a grasshopper, a nice tasty grasshopper with nothing much going for it, barring a pair of jumping legs and the ability to hide itself away. But what is amazing about this particular grasshopper is that it's covered in these fine hairs and its eyes extend to the top of its head, right there. Unlike any other grasshopper I've ever seen, this one has eyes on top of its head, allowing it to see predators approaching. Have a look at that. That's the smooth part, the smooth circle by my fingernail, now at the tip of my finger. Those are his eyes. Isn't that incredible? eyes on top of its head, almost like a hippopotamus really, that have migrated to the top of its head so it can see something approaching, and it can actually see us. It's moving from one side of the branch to another to try and stay away from us. And let me tell you something, if this little guy had been sitting on the branch, let me show you which branch he's actually sitting on. This is where he should be. Can you imagine how camouflaged this little grasshopper would be if he was sitting on this particular branch? And I think that that's probably what he does, is he sits on these combretums, exactly the same color, is a bit furry, perhaps as a deterrent his fur makes him look like a hairy worm which has these irritating hairs, or potentially just breaks up his shape so that he doesn't look like a grasshopper and is good too much. But really, find of the afternoon for me. Awesome, eh? Alrighty. Alright, and now to get back to Mauritius' question about the pottery. Now, a good couple of weeks ago, I found a pottery jar that was buried in one of these termite mounds here. And we were going to take a walk out to that termite mound last week, Wednesday, with the owner of this particular reserve, the owner of Djuma. He wanted to go and see the pot. There was one of two things it could be. It could be a treasure pot, and basically used as a safety deposit box. Somebody would bury their treasure in a termite mound, the termites would then cover it up and only they'd know where it is. Or it was as a gift to the ancestors, and not necessarily to mark a grave, but quite often pots of beer were buried in termite mounds, prominent termite mounds around us, and they are buried inside these termite mounds as an offering, an appeasement to the ancestors around this area. And the owner, he wanted to go out there to go and see. Now there's a couple of people that live on this particular reserve and who work for Djuma, who've been living here for generation after generation after generation. And we were going to take two of those family members out to the pot. Still are. I still need to give you, I'll keep you updated about that particular story. And we will do it, I promise, at some point. Anyway, on that note, we're going to send you back to that wonderful leopard.
Oh, we've had such a lovely time here, everybody. Charlotte's come down. She's brought herself what looks like the tip of the tail. Karula's gone up to have a bit more of a meal. George looks very decidedly irritated that he's not eating anything at the moment. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Listen to them. I'm just going to have to talk on the radio briefly, try and get Mike into the sighting. Let me call him. I think she might bring it down. Go ahead, Mike. Here she comes. Yeah, I found my copy. There is, what is that, Karula? As far as I can make out, it's probably just Susie from Buffelshoek coming here. Look at this. I mean, where's the rest of it? I'm amazed by this, everybody. Maybe it's just a very small one, and she's killed it earlier today. She must have. Ugh. That's not very nice, is it, Ryan? It's a bit disgusting. What an incredible sighting we've had. People are starting to make their way down here, everybody, so we might have to move out at some stage, but that's okay. We've had the most spectacular afternoon and morning. Now that, of course, that rich bone marrow that she's devouring there, her babies will not be able to get her. It will be much too difficult for them to get into the bones there. Now Georgie boy is making his way back up the hill. I don't know what he thinks he's going to find there. But given that incredibly scraggly piece, maybe there are one or two bits left up there. Charlotte is eating her tail, not her tail. I'm assuming the tail of the hapless Nyala calf who was unfortunately the end of its mortal coil. Jeannie, you want to know how old the cubs are going to be when they make their first kill. Jeannie, I think you'll find that these cubs have probably already made a kill or two, but it would have been a lizard or a termite or something like that, maybe a gerbil, but they won't make their first proper kill of, well, I mean, they could potentially kill something like a squirrel now, or a mongoose maybe. They might be able to kill a mongoose now, roundabout now. When would they be able to feed themselves? I think from about 8 months they'd probably be able to kill sufficiently to kill themselves if they to feed themselves if they had to. Certainly, I mean, Sandile, before he went into rehab, he was basically living on his own. Shadow was hardly feeding him at all, and he was a year old, and he wasn't killing big stuff. But he was never hungry. He was always had a fat belly, and I think he was eating many franklins. I think the franklin population at the south of Djuma took a horrible pasting during that time. Ah, where's she going? That was a horrendous photograph I just took, everyone. Yet again. I'm just going to be on the radio quick. Mike, I think make your way straight here. I will move out. There's definitely, well, there's probably space for two. I'll make my way out when you come. Look at our queen. Isn't she special? And we are so grateful to her. She provides us with so much endless entertainment. Isabella, you're a very observant young 8-year-old, and you say, why do they curl their tails like that? Well, interestingly, you know what happens. Sorry, 1 second, everyone. I'm just taking the radio down. What happens is that's just kind of a resting position, and you see the white on the bottom there, Isabella. That little white bit there is almost like a surrender flag. Now, you can ask your mum and dad what a surrender flag is, but basically, it means that that tail is used to say to all the birds around here, I'm not trying to eat you, so please don't make a noise and let everything else know that I'm here. And that's what happens. So that's why I think the tail is curled up like that. And if they walk, Isabella, and they're walking through the bush and they're trying to hunt something, well, they'll walk about the place, and then if the birds start going, chee, 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 she'll flick that tail up into the air, and the birds go, and they stop calling, because they know that she's not going to try and come and eat them. I think George is coming back down. She's chuffing. She's making that chuffing noise. She's going. Choo, choo. This is just fantastic, isn't it? Look, we've got them both now. Big fat belly. Look how fat he is. He's such a fat pig. Now she's gone back up. And you see how I say they don't feed together. They do everything almost entirely separately. I find it so bizarre. But it probably isn't bizarre. It's probably completely what they're supposed to do. But it just goes to show, I mean, as long as I've been out here, I've spent so so rare and so spectacular, these sightings we're having, that, you know, and the amount of time we're able to spend with these cats, that this kind of behavior is almost new to me. Well, I'm certainly seeing it through new eyes. I mean, there's no conflict between them at all, but they're just not. Wait till those Nkahuma cubs start knocking about the place, and you'll notice the unbelievable difference between the way they behave and the way these leopards behave. Look at him. He still wants more. Yes, that's not a delicious meal, is it, Karula? Nah. Just fantastic stuff. Okay, now Mike is coming down, everyone. I don't know that we're going to be able to fit more than one vehicle in here. And I'm actually going to say to you that I think we should leave, because we've had a wonderful time. So I'll just get Mike in here, and then I think we'll pull out. He's not quite here yet. Let's just enjoy this a little bit longer, and then we'll pull out and let Mike come in. Sorry. Am I right now, Brian? See Karula hissing at her son? Look at that. Go ahead. Affirmative. Mike is making his way in here. Susie apparently was coming, but I don't know where she is. Then you can have a go. Copy. I'm going to make my way out of the sighting now. Mike's just arrived. I don't know that there's actually going to be space for more than one in here. You might get one view from the northern side of the drainage and one from the south. Everybody, while I organize this, let's go across to a very special friend just returned from leave, and then we'll come and say goodbye to the cubs before we move out. Special friend Jamie Patterson.
Good afternoon and welcome to a slightly delayed part of our sunset safari. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, my name is Jamie. For those of you who are regular viewers, I am back from leave and very happy to be taking you all out on safari once again, and to be reunited with Viam, of course, who is on camera this afternoon. Now, I apologize for my tardiness, although apparently you've been having a marvelous time with James and Karula and her two wonderful cubs. I'm so excited to see them once again, just to see how much they've grown. I got lumped with doing the shopping for all of the miscreants in camp, which is why I'm terribly late. You shouldn't try and do shopping in Hoedspruit and the last day of the month, because that's when everybody gets paid and that's when everybody goes shopping. It means that the queues are quite extensive. And then the avocados went flying everywhere. It was like an avalanche. No, avalanche. Connor didn't think that was funny at all. Kirsty did though. I thought it was pretty hilarious. Now we're starting off with some dwarf mongoose who are heading home. Because it feels as though, as I'm driving along, while I've been gone, winter has really thoroughly, well and truly, hit home. And already the evening chill is starting to set in. And the dwarf mongoose are scurrying back to their bolt holes. Of course, they've all disappeared. Let's rephrase that. The dwarf mongoose have scurried back to their bolt holes. They heard of my imminent arrival and have promptly disappeared. Oh well.
There's hornbills.
Oh, that's okay. Thanks, Viam. Viam says it's okay. There's hornbills there for us. And as most of you know, very common to see dwarf mongoose and these yellow-billed hornbills together. They have quite a special relationship, although both of them are thinking about heading off to start roosting for the night as well. The one on the left has got something in its beak, just struggling to swallow it. Well, I think it's managed now. All right, hornbills. Starting off our afternoon. Thank you to all of you who are sending through the welcome back. Very much appreciated. Even the dwarf mongoose have decided that they might show face for a brief few moments. Now we're sitting right on the northern boundary of Djuma, on Buffel's Hook cut line, and the plan, I believe, for the afternoon, of course I don't know where anything is, and I certainly don't know where all of the animals have been moving while I've been away. Been very much sort of zoning out on the beach for the last few days. So Liam tells me that there are fresh male leopard tracks around Gwari Pan Buffel's Hook Dam area, and that's the plan. I think we're going to see if we can't find Tingana to spice up the first drive back. And let us head off. So as I said, I've been doing a different kind of wildlife watching while I've been away. So Brent and myself went down to a place known as the South Coast, which is the coast sort of to the south of Durban, runs all the way down to Port Edward. For those of you who are familiar with that general area in KwaZulu-Natal, we had the most stunning weather. Really was, for midwinter, it was sunny, it was sort of mid-70s every day. We really were spoilt. And even better in terms of wildlife watching, the whales were early. So there's the typical sort of migratory season. The best time to go whale watching in South Africa is the sort of winter months between June, August, September. But we weren't really expecting to see whales that far north. And we got fortunate enough in that there were a few eager ones that had set off on their routes a little bit earlier. Now they were very far away, so I couldn't tell you whether they were southern right whales or whether they were humpbacked whales. I have a suspicion they were southern right. The humpbacks are a little bit slower in terms of their movements. But nevertheless, to sit on a deck and watch whales coming right out of the water and throwing themselves back into the sea is a truly extraordinary, very different experience. That being said, I've always been more of a bush girl than a sea girl. I'm very, very happy to be back home on familiar turf. There is, however, somebody who's not terribly happy with my return, and that is the person who is stuck behind me while I crawl along this cut line. So while I pull over and let them pass, let's head across to the wonderful Steph and see what else he has found for you.
It's good having Jamie back on camera, isn't it? It's nice to see her again. It's not every day that we get to show you, especially in the dry season, caterpillars busy eating some leaves. Now, I quite often don't pass Ozaroas, and look at the little surprise we found on this particular Ozaroa. This collection of caterpillars, and basically what's happened and why they've stopped eating is because the temperature dropped down to a point where they are unable to function anymore, and they are only going to be able to start eating leaves again once it warms up a little bit tomorrow morning again. But it gives us a unique time, almost like a photograph, an instant in time to capture these caterpillars, which are usually quite furiously busy ingesting leaves, and gives us a little bit of a chance to see what they're doing. Now have a look at this guy. He's actually come unstuck from his plant, and the back half of his body has come off of the leaf that he was on. It's lost its stickiness. And have a look at its tiny little legs. Basically just holds on with its front few legs. Isn't that the most bizarre thing you've ever seen? And this Ozaroa, or this young Ozaroa, is literally peppered with them. Have a look at this one here. He's literally stopped also in mid-eat. And then the largest one of the group is a little bit down here. And he's the one that looks like he's had all the leaves to himself. Also, just stopped in mid-mouthful, really. Have a look at that. A funny little caterpillar. Quite difficult to get the focus. Bear with us. Zooming in here on such a tiny little thing. There we go. quite difficult to identify exactly what this particular caterpillar is, either a moth or a butterfly. I'm not too sure which one it is. It looks almost big enough to pupate. Now, yes, it is quite late in the season. We don't usually see caterpillars at this time of the year that are out in the open like this, and they are taking a big chance. Could quite very well get cold enough tonight to actually freeze them to death. Luckily, that being cold-blooded animals, they've got quite a wide temperature tolerance, and they should be able to weather the storm tonight. I don't think there's a cold front on the way, or it's going to be particularly chilly tonight. Hopefully they get what they need in terms of leaves in the next couple of days to pupate. That would shelter them a little bit, and then coming out as adults to mate, lay some eggs, all before the next chilly fronts come in, blowing out of the South Atlantic and from the South Pole. Isn't that nice? Alrighty, I think let's carry on. I don't know what else to say. No. Watch out here, Dave. Now we're still just meandering along. We're basically making our way back to camp. It's starting to get a little bit dark. We're probably about 3 or 4 miles away from camp. So we've got a bit of a march going on. But we've decided to utilize this area, as you can see down here. It's basically a landscape, an open parkland type landscape with these thickets of trees, and it's in these little thickets that we're finding all these gems that we're showing you today. The grasshoppers, these worms that we've got now. And we've been quite lucky of late to find centipede eaters. It's a type of snake. Have a look at this weird growth form. This is an apple leaf that's been damaged young and now is grown up to be a perfect rubbing post. And you can actually see where animals have come and rubbed their bellies against this. This looks like a pasting of some sort. No, definitely not a pasting. What I thought these marks were here is the pasting from a civet. It's at civet height, and quite often what civet do is they reverse their backsides up onto a branch and they press out an anal gland and they make a marking on a prominent marker like this. But they're quite pungent. This one definitely isn't. The anal pasting of an African civet. And I'm quite lucky it wasn't that anal pasting of that civet. Anyway, we're going to send you back over to James.
Well, everybody, we've left the cubbies in the company of Mike from Cheetah Plains. I think we got the most amazing view there, and I don't think that we could have had it better. So now we'll go and see what else we can find. Frankly, if we can just find another ant-eating fly, I'd be more than happy. Not an incredible way to spend a Thursday afternoon. What we're going to do now is head off towards Buffelshoek Dam and see if we can see anything there. And who knows, it's been a lovely warm winter's day, so I'm sure there have been elephants and buffalo around that have wanted to have a bit of a drink, so maybe they'll still be there. Maybe the wild dogs will pitch up. Such has been our luck. Oh, Jamie's on her way there, so we won't go there then. We'll go somewhere else. I know where we'll go. We'll go way up to the north. We'll go towards Sydney's Dam then, because we've got full signal there. I think Jamie will have dodgy signal if she goes there, so we'll go towards Sydney's Dam and see if we can't find a very large herd of elephants or something there. Marvellous idea. Well, who knows what we'll find on the way. It is. One day, I will know that I've arrived at a place of a spiritual zen, if you like, when I can feel like I feel now after a drive of looking at combretum bushes and silver cluster leaf trees. And if I feel this same sense of elation that I feel now, I'll know I've arrived at a state of complete peace and enlightenment. Don't you think, Brian? Yes, because sometimes it doesn't feel like that. Right, let's go across to Jamie, who is also seeking enlightenment, this time at Buffelshoek Dam.
Oh, enlightenment. No pressure there. But we are almost at Buffelshoek Dam. Apparently we stole poor James's route plan. But let us see what we can find around here. I'm sort of hoping that Tingana might be in the area, the dominant male leopard of these parts. I haven't seen him in a considerable period of time. So it's just exciting to come back from leave and to reacquaint oneself with all of the different movements and all of the different animals, and how the bush is looking, which I have to say it's looking unbelievably dry, which is not unexpected. But in the space of, how long was I gone? I was gone for about 9 days. In that time period, everything, all the bush willows have gone completely brown and dry and lost most of their leaves. It's amazing how quickly the change happens. Plus, it's freezing cold already. And a very good afternoon to Monique in London. And as always, welcome on our sunset safari. You were wondering if I'm planning on going to the hyena den or a little bit later. That's a very good question, and the reason it's such a good question is because I hear, while I've been away, the hyenas appear to have moved. Sorry, I was just keeping a close eye on this hippo. Shame, she got a bit of a fright as we came through. And you can see why. Sorry, Monique, I'll get back to you in 1 second. You can see why she's a bit nervous. She's got a not tiny, tiny calf with her, but a calf that's a couple of months old. And now, having a look at Buffelshoek Dam, they haven't really got much in the way of a safe haven. There's a lot more mud showing than there was when I left. It's going to be a very rough time for the hippo and the various bulk grazers of this area, just chatting a bit about the dryness. And the hippo, I think, probably have it the hardest. We were discussing it earlier while we were waiting for the flight to Hoedspruit, and the fact that we're going to see more and more scenes like this. It's going to be very difficult for all of us to witness. And hopefully most of them will be able to move. Luckily, I suppose, there's no fences, so they can move. It's just enormous distances until they get to the next permanent water source. And if I had to guess, I would say Buffelshoek Dam is probably going to be dry. When do we think, Liam? End of July?
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. I think that dam's going to be gone by the end of July. And a very warm welcome to James Dugan, a new name for me. You were wondering if the drought is visible outside of the Kruger National Park. And yes, absolutely it is. So where I've just come from, the Natal area of South Africa, and particularly the coastline, it gets an enormous amount of rain, and everything's usually incredibly green almost year-round, pretty much. And you can see even when in wintertime, which is their dry season, same as ours, you've still got the rivers flowing through and meeting the sea. And when I went back to a place that I grew up visiting as a child, where the lagoon used to flow into the sea, and it was pretty much a constant ever-flowing. You had to wade across it at any time of the year to get to the other side of the beach. And this year it wasn't even anywhere near the sea. So it absolutely is visible, and it's probably most visible for the people who are in agriculture and those sorts of professions. So for the animals of the Kruger National Park, dealing with this situation is going to be difficult, and a lot of them will, or quite a few of them will die as a result. But at least it's part of a natural. They've got no fences. They've got 4 million hectares worth of unfenced wilderness area to move about in. But for people whose livelihood depends on farms and farming, and the smaller reserves without water supplies, life is going to get incredibly tough. And sights like this are going to become more and more common. Oh. Little baby yawn. Just caught the end there of the young hippo opening its mouth up. Now, generally when hippo do that, it's not because they're tired, it's because they feel threatened in some way. It's all right, girl. I'm not going to do anything. It's okay. All right. We're going to leave. Not because she's going to do anything to us, but just because clearly our presence here at the moment with them feeling so under pressure, it's just making them feel more and more uncomfortable. And the longer I sit here and the longer I talk about them, the more she feels as though our focus is on her rather than on the dam itself. She doesn't know any better. So we'll move off. We'll let her be because she does have a little baby with her. You don't need to add any additional pressure more than the one that she's already under. Right, girl. We'll head off. Fortunately, we now have the dual carriageway at Buffelshoek Dam. Well, I was going to take the furthest one, but the furthest one looks a bit shaky. So while I go and look for the last tracks of Tingana and think about Monique's question about the hyena den, let's go back across to James, see what he's found for you.
I thought we'd come and share sunset with you. To be honest, there's very few things as pleasurable for me as being on foot at sunset or at sunrise in the Kruger National Park. It really is just such a, I don't know, and there are two different feelings that get generated for me as well. Sunrises are always full of anticipation, a type of a feeling that there's something around the next corner and that there's, you know, the day is just so nice and fresh. And then evenings like we've got at the moment, they're just sort of this sense of calm and peace, finality to the days, whatever activities you had that day. It's just nice to sit and appreciate. So a few of us in actual fact have the privilege of being able to watch sunrises and sunsets. I think it is one of those great miracles and gifts that are given to us. We need to appreciate, just like rainbows, I suppose, and clearless nights where we can see the Milky Way above us. I don't know, northern lights, wherever you are in the day, or in the world, I should say. Stop and appreciate a sunrise and a sunset. Now we've got a bit of a thing happening over here. Now I'm busy having a look. You can actually see at the base of this marula, this is a marula tree, is a bunch of its seeds, and they are spread roughly in a semicircle just around this side of the tree. Those are the marula pips. The fruit of the marula would have been around that, probably to about double its size. And inside this pip is a seed. And inside that seed is a lot of oil. Now, oil is a type of fat, and fat is a very rare commodity out here in the bush. Not much has fat, and not much is able to give you fat. The trees knows this, and encase their seed in this very woody, hard shell. But it has a cap, and it needs a cap so that the baby marula tree can push out through that cap. It wouldn't be able to force its way through that woody outer covering. It's just too hard. So the marula provides its youngster with a cap, and that cap has been exploited by a squirrel, and squirrels are well known to larder their seeds. And I think what we found here is a squirrel larder. I know James was sharing with you a couple of days ago that he hasn't seen a squirrel larder, and I think I've found one, and let me show you where I think it is. I think this squirrel is burying its larder inside here. And what it's doing is it's then fetching its stash of seeds, and it's sitting here, and it's then eating the seed and spitting out the seed here on the floor. And that's why we're finding all these marula seeds around just the base of this tree. I think we found ourselves a squirrel larder. Definitely something that we're going to be season.
Don't move too much. Hang on, let me just change a setting here. Okay, I've got it on my 1000-person setting. Ready? And 1, 2, 3. Oh, you all look wonderful. Well done. You look very beautiful, all of you. Excellent job. Now, we're not too close to Sydney's... Well, we are quite close to Sydney's dam. We're not there yet. We just thought we'd quickly stop and have a look at the sun, which is very pretty. And you can see the winter dust there, turning it 1,000 different shades of orange and yellow and gold and copper and ginger and peach and apricot and turquoise. No, not the last one. Isn't that beautiful? You can see the corona there, I think. Fantastic. Gee whiz. Do you think that's as pretty as Karula's cubs?
Pretty close.
It's pretty close. Pretty close. Of course, without that star, that is the sun, life as we know it, Karula and her cubs, the combretum trees, the silver cluster leaves, and indeed Brian and me, and all of you, we wouldn't be around. Stunning. Go ahead. Yeah, I'm sure if you've got space, I think they're relaxed enough for two. Alright everybody, we're going to make our way to Sydney's Dam. We're not too far from there. Jamie has got some tracks, and if I know where she is, I think she's going to show you some cat tracks.
Apparently James has read my mind, because that's exactly what I'm going to do. Apart from just looking at the dryness of the vegetation and how much things have changed, we found our job, or at least we found the track slightly sooner than we expected to. So Tingana's been from a walk from where the tracks were first found up near the eastern boundary of this reserve, or of Djuma, the boundary with Torchwood. So his tracks are over here. Unfortunately, somebody has driven over them. I'm going to hop out quickly just to show you, because it's not all that clear and the light is slowly disappearing. But he was very much on a marking mission. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. Let me just jump out to show you exactly what it is we're looking at. That's, of course, provided I can untangle myself. I am now profoundly rusty in terms of the way in which things work. There we go. We'll get there eventually. Alright, so these are the tracks of the leopard that we're trying to find, and hopefully as it starts to get cooler, this is the perfect time to be out looking for a leopard. His paw prints are here. Do I know it's Tingana, by the way? Probably not exactly, but it's most likely him, the dominant male of this area. This is his back pad here. The sand is incredibly soft. Now I know when I arrived, there's his toes here, the wind was howling, which means that in the soft, soft sand, these tracks could actually be fresher than they look. Even though their outline isn't terribly clear, the wind might just have obscured them. So this is his back track, front foot, back foot, and I said that he's on a marking mission. What I mean by that is he is marking his territory through urine spraying, or urine scenting. We know that because he's doing what male leopards do, or female leopards actually when they do that. They love to walk along a road, as all predators do. It's quiet, it's easy, they don't have to worry about grass or branches or anything like that getting in their face. But then they go off to the side and they go and they spray on a bush or a tree or whatever it is that they happen to find. They spray their urine backwards. So he's done that and he's cut off the road and then back onto the road again. The difficulty, of course, comes with the fact that the tracks are, well, they have been driven over, because I've been traveling along in the direction that the tracks are going, which is behind us, and I didn't see them right up until this point. But I think that might mean his general direction, if we pick it, looks as though he's heading towards Buffelshoek Hook cut line or towards the dam. He might just have been a little bit early, or he might have gone and had a quick break. So what we're going to do is we're going to loop the area and come back and approach from the north and just double check that he hasn't popped out anywhere there. Let's go see what we can find. These tracks are not crystal clear, but that probably means that they're from this morning. So they may not be the freshest. They were from this morning most likely. But knowing Tingana, what he usually does is he exerts himself throughout the night, wandering about, covering an enormous distance, and he almost inevitably goes and flops down somewhere in the shade, unless of course he's caught something in this block. Now, I know that James said that he did see tracks this morning, and Liam has informed me that they looked, you said they were very fresh, Liam?
Yeah,
This morning they were very fresh. So he's been wandering about, and I think let's just do a quick loop back towards Buffelshoek Dam. And a very warm welcome to Ellie, who's been watching for a relatively short period of time, and in fact we haven't met before. Well, Ellie, it's wonderful to meet you and to have you on our drives. I hope you have become as addicted as most of our regular viewers have become. It's also wonderful to be back amongst you all and back in the bush. You wanted to know, since this is your first time meeting me, what my favorite big cat is out of the three. So lion, leopard and cheetah. Oh, it's a very difficult question to answer. And it depends on so many things. I think I'm going to have to say that the leopard would be my top. I really, there's something, and I find that with most humans. Leopards human beings find them incredible and incredibly beautiful to look at. And almost invariably, when you get safari guests, the first thing they ask to see is a leopard. It's got that reputation as being the most elusive of all of them. But that being said, it's a very difficult choice to make, because cheetah and lion are also incredibly fascinating. They're wonderful creatures. Lions with their tremendous power and the awe that they inspire in people, and cheetah because they are something completely different. So totally unique out of all of the big cats of the world, with their speed and their agility. And while we go looking for my favorite, I guess, of the big cats out here, let's go back across to James, who's found you something a little bit larger.
This is an enormous herd of elephants, everyone. I wonder if it isn't the same one that we watched this morning. And there are two cows in it that have rapier sharp tusks. One of them has only one tusk left. They're so thin and so long and so sharp that I think through the years of using them, one of them has snapped off. There you can just see her sticking out. No, that's not her. Where is she? She's gone behind there somewhere. But then another one off to the left with another set, and I'm pretty sure you'll find that they are related to each other. It's a lovely big herd of elephants. They've just finished drinking at Sydney's dam, and now they're coming onto there she is.
Keep coming. They'll be on your left-hand side. They're actually in the drain.
There we go. Look at that thing. Isn't that amazing? It's like an elephant-sized toothpick. There's a nice perspective there. You can see the car in the background. You see the size of them there. And somebody was asking this morning about the smell of elephants, what they smell like, and we can smell them now. And I described it was yesterday evening, wasn't it, actually? I described it as sort of leather mixed with honey. Yeah, and I stand by that. It really is quite a strong smell now of all of these elephants walking past. And I think that's quite a good way of describing it. It's a big herd. And as I was saying yesterday as well, they're not necessarily the same herd all the time. What happens is that these small family groups of matriarch and youngsters will stay together, and then when the water becomes more scarce like it is now, then they will kind of agglomerate like this and move around in the same groups. And so these herds get much bigger. Tony, you want to know if they ever scratch themselves with their trunks? Absolutely they do. They scratch their ears and their eyes all the time with their trunks. In fact, I'll see if I can spot one doing it now. That's a lovely shot there, Brian. Well done. The usual story. Like the way that sort of shines in the sun, don't you? The last dying embers of the day. Very pretty sort of lime green colour. Beautiful. You can hear one of them shouting behind. And you know, often that terrifying sound is made by smaller, younger animals that actually pose no threat. Let's see if we can find one scratching its ear or its eye. And Tony, they are used so much like hands. You know, you use your hands to pick things up, to scratch, to indicate your emotions, to, well, beat people off if you have to. And they do exactly the same things with their trunks. You must think of it as a hand that smells, basically. They're having a wonderful time feeding across here. There. That one there, Brian, was scratching her ear. She's not there. No, she's not scratching her ear anymore. Her ear is sufficiently unitchied. There's her little baby coming up behind. I think there are probably 30 or 40 elephants here, and more coming. So we'll just sit right here, I think. And these are the older cows in the group. She's in pretty fine fettle, I think. Isn't her talking? That's wonderful. They are so human. I find in so many ways, the way they behave, the way they move sometimes, the way the bulls, when they're young, play with each other and horse about, young females taking on the role of adult females, sort of quite young. Look at these little ones, all coming through here. It's the most beautiful sighting. See if you can count them, everyone. I'd love to know how many you thought there were. I don't even know where to begin. Go eating now. These forage there, that elephant you've just seen with the tail there, that one, yeah. That is a red thorn tree. And they've maintained their leaves, and Brian pointed that out to me last night. He said, look at all these acacias, they've still got perfectly green leaves, and I hadn't even noticed it before, but they do. They're not evergreen. They might be semi-deciduous, but they've still got their green leaves on them, and they're not being eaten at the moment. But you can see this tree has been eaten many times by elephants, and I think you'll find that that's late winter forage. Lots of tannin in acacia leaves. Look! Pushing over a tree there on the left-hand side. She's just pushed over a knobthorn tree. Now, best you eat that. Don't just push it over. You can see she's lactating heavily. The inside of her right shoulder there, that's milk that's leaking out. So she's obviously got a young calf. And she, of course, just like with human beings who are having to feed babies, have to stay healthy, have to eat sufficient food. And there we go. I think that's a knobthorn. Is that a knobthorn, Brian? Mitch, you want to know if they fight with each other over water? Yes, that is a knobthorn. You can see it's been macerated many times. They don't really fight, you know. They will chase other animals off at waterholes. So they chase buffalo, they chase hippo, they chase impala. I've never seen them fighting with each other over water, though. That's quite interesting. It's a really good question. I haven't thought about it. But I've never seen them chase each other. And yesterday we had that amazing sighting of the one herd joining the other. And the little ones almost took the lead as they walked towards the water, and they joined up with the little ones of the other herd. And it was amazing to see. It was like they were so excited to see unfamiliar faces, unfamiliar elephant faces, and they were just overjoyed by it. Little ones like the one you're looking at now. So sweet. Did you just kick him? He's obviously not behaving. And like I say, it's so human. So human, because the discipline meted out on them is often quite severe, but it's constant. They're being mentored and told what to do all the time, these little things. Just fantastic stuff. And it seems, everybody, just while we're looking here, that Karula has decided, I think, to move on after she finished that rather ropey bit. Oh, what's wrong there? So who knows where she'll be tomorrow with her little babies. Now this is the young bulls now bringing up the back of the herd, with one cow there shepherding them. They're being told to behave themselves or they're going to get a kick, like that one did, or thrashing with the trunk. Seemingly very careful about walking through that little ditch in the road, but they are brilliant climbers, and we had an amazing sighting this morning, Dave and I, of two of them climbing on top of a termite mound perched there. And you just don't think that they're very good climbers, but they are. She didn't like those birds, you know that. He's watching the birds and watching us. Those are hardy-dars, everyone. So what's that? The little one running. I don't know why it's so hilarious when they run. There's now a great deal of moving at great speed, great deal of power walking. Alright, we'll sit here a little bit longer with this herd of elephants. In the meantime, let's go across to Steffi and say goodbye to him.
And it's coming to that day where the darkness is descending and I'm starting to get that little itch up the back of my skull saying that we need to get to shelter before I go from being the curious investigator of stumps to something that's a little bit lower on the food chain. And just because of that, I just want to say thank you very much for joining us for this afternoon's bushwalk. It's been such a pleasure as always. Thank you for all your comments. Thank you for all your questions. And above all, thank you very much for your support. I'll see you on walk again at some point. And from myself and Dave, we just want to say thank you and goodbye.
This is what it is. Oh. Right, hello everybody. I'm just going to move a little bit forward. I didn't move forward earlier because I'm trying to identify that red ant-eating fly. I think I've got close. I'll show you a picture shortly. Let's just enjoy these elephants first, because they are infinitely more attractive than a fly. I'm going to stop here and you can super zoom them. Now they all seem to that someone's given the order that they need to move it up a bit and head into the woodland for supper. It's obviously getting cold. Supper, I mean. Kids have had their drink, they've had their bath, supper time, then sleep. And they'll move a little bit during the night, but those little ones will definitely have to have a snooze sometime during the course of the night. Let's pop up here and see if we can get one last view of them. They're heading through some very thick stuff there. And then I'll quickly show you my fly. Hello Jen, you're worried, or you're asking about that big bull elephant with a hole in his ear, and for those of you who haven't met him, I think we've posted on our Facebook page the video of the elephants of this area. And there's a video of him having an interaction with both Scott and with Tara, and he comes up to the vehicle and he touches the vehicle in his left ear. And Jen, you want to know if he's still around. Jen, I haven't seen him for a long time, so no, he is. The last we heard he was in Manyeleti, so he hasn't been around here for a while, but that's not unusual. Do move around quite a lot. can hear quite a lot of flatulence there. Can you hear that? Righty, while they disappear off into the woodland, Jamie Patterson has got a little leveret. No, never mind. Scrub hare.
No more leveret, I'm afraid. Our two scrub hares that were out feeding and actually relatively relaxed for this time of day. Most of you know that when we shine the spotlight on them, they'll sit still and we can have a good long look at them. But it's not often that we get to see them in, if not quite broad daylight, then certainly the sort of half light of the evening. They're gone completely. They've disappeared right off back into the block. So what we were looking at, for those of you who are unfamiliar, was something known as a scrub hare. I would show you a picture, but unfortunately I don't have anything with me apart from myself and my earpiece and a bottle of water. Such was the rush in terms of jumping onto the vehicle this afternoon. Okay, well, since we haven't managed to show you a scrub hare, let's try and show you a leopard before the evening is over. I'm sure he's in this block somewhere off to my left. His tracks haven't come out, as far as I can tell. Liam and I were just discussing about the fact that it most likely is Tingana, just because of the fact that he was marking his territorial boundaries. This is one of his regularly used routes. That being said, it could also be Gajima. So Gajima is the mystery male leopard that I have yet to see. He spent a lot of time in this area, and Brent spent a considerable period of time habituating him and getting him used to the presence of vehicles moving around him, and he's still not quite there. So if it is Gajima, and he has just started, he is at that age where he's looking for a way to establish himself and a place to establish himself. If it is Gajima, then he probably watched us drive past, because he's very, very skittish, very uncomfortable with the presence of vehicles. And as always, a warm welcome to James Taylor and welcome to the Sunset Safari. You were wondering about on the subject of... Sorry, James. Let's hold on 1 second, if you don't mind, before I get to your question, because there's a leopard track going the wrong way. Now, why might that be? Did he come for a drink? He hasn't gone back. Where has it gone now? I promise you I saw it. Oh, there it is there. Here we go. Well done, VM. Well, that's sort of going in the opposite direction of where I thought he would be going. So maybe he's been coming down for a drink and then back to a kill. It's not fresh though. It's not nearly as fresh as the tracks we were looking at earlier. The plot thickens. It's entirely possible that he's harboring a kill in here. So the tracks have gone the opposite direction, but into the same place that the other tracks were coming from. No? Okay. Let's do one more loop. Maybe he will help us out by moving around and maybe by alerting the other animals out here to his presence. We can follow alarm calls. While we do a loop around, back to James Taylor's question. Let me just check really carefully. Now, that was on the subject of landowners and whether or not they keep a record of the animals that move about in the area and know which sort of territories they hold or which animals they might find on their land. And the answer is yes, absolutely they do. They become very, very familiar with the different animals, some more than others, of course, those that spend the most amount of time. But they'll also follow what's the Panthera data that we receive, which gives us a record of all of the sightings of the different animals in the different areas. So the lions, the leopards. The landowners actually have a very solid grasp of where the different animals are moving about within their properties and within neighboring properties. Because, of course, part of the agreements in terms of being a landowner is that if you can drive on, or if you own some property, you'll be able to drive on another landowner's property in return for the sort of vice versa right. So in return for the ability for them to be able to drive on your property. So they're very much up to date with the movements of the different animals. And again, of course, different landowners more so than others. One more check around Buffelshoek Dam. This time approaching from the other side. And then we'll do another loop. And Aaron in New Zealand, you want to know if there's any nocturnal creatures I would like to see upon my return. The answer is yes, always. Any of the nocturnal creatures I find incredibly exciting, but of course an aardvark on my first day back would be very special. I saw some of you posted pictures of the aardvark that was seen on one of the dam cameras. And that's always a possibility. I'd be very excited to see one of those, Aaron. But any of our nocturnal animals are always thoroughly entertaining. I've come around this side of Buffelshoek Dam because chances are, if this leopard came down for a drink, this would have been the route that he took. But he hasn't come down for a drink. So let's do one more loop back to where I saw those last set of tracks. Now, while we do that, let's go across to James, who has some antelope for you.
Indeed, I have some antelope and they are perfectly coloured, as you can see, for this particular type of vegetation, aren't they, Brian? Look how they are the same colour as the golden leaves behind them. Very clever, I think, that is. Much more camouflage for the winter than they are for the summer. Because they don't have much to hide behind in the winter time. Beautiful little herd of impalas coming out into the open area to try and avoid being eaten during the course of the night. Excuse the scratching on the audio there, that's just me fixing the microphone that is actually mounted now in my head. More in my hat than in my head, but still, you get the idea. Just listen again, listen to the rustling of the wind. So nice. Such a different sound when the wind blows in the winter to when it blows in the summer. And you might just be able to hear around us, there are a few pearl-spotted owls starting to call. And there are also lots of drongos that are attempting to copy them, mimic them. I think drongos are particularly poor mimics. I had a friend at school who was totally tone deaf, and I'm reminded of him when I hear drongos trying to imitate pearl-spotted owls. Now you see these impalas, which would graze if they could, are now forced to eat the leaves off the trees. They can browse, they're pretty adaptable that way. But if they can, they'd rather eat grass. Beautiful cow, at least you. Just a gorgeous night, and you can also hear, just in the background there maybe, if you listen carefully, a rain locust going. Can you hear it, Brian?
I don't know.
I can hear it in the background. Okay, let's move on from here. I'm going to pop down to Sydney's Dam just in case that big herd of buffalo hasn't popped down. And we have got all the super zoom, you see, so it's worth using it. So let's pop down there. It's just down here, not far. And we'll see if there is a herd of beefies. And as we go, you can see the western horizon layered with the embers of the day. Do you see the embers, Brian? I see that the camera is self-leveling itself. We're just about at the dam, and the mountains in the background there, and they're covered in dust. Absolutely covered in dust from the wind, because the slightest breeze now in the winter time will blow up the dust, and it makes those sunsets so very, very special. Isn't that nice? Hello James Richard, you're interested in whether or not those gecko eggs that were in the buffalo skull that we viewed on TV, did they ever hatch? I don't know, James. For those of you who didn't watch the TV show, what we had was we picked up a buffalo skull in the bush, stuck the microscope down into the cranium, and we found 2 gecko eggs, and in fact the gecko. Then, during a very windy night, the skull fell off the shelf, and the adult gecko disappeared. I don't know where he went, or she went, left the eggs there. Now they're not known for their parental care, so I'm still hoping those little eggs are going to hatch. But I decided rather than take the skull home, we'd put it in a warm place, sort of safe-ish, out when we took the tent down. So James, I haven't been back to look. But it's on quarantine clearings, and if you remind me tomorrow morning, we'll go and have a look and see if the eggs are still there. Here is the dam. Ah, Brian, nothing is thirsty. Nothing at all. Unless there's a leopard there. Let's just scan the shoreline. Very pretty yellow colours. There are some Egyptian geese. Ah, papow. And they're just eating their last little bits of algae. Now you will read that Egyptian geese are algae eaters, and they'll eat this sort of young shoots of small plants, aquatic and otherwise. You will read that they do not eat fish. Well, we have 2 Egyptian geese that live at Buffelshoek Dam that eat fish like it's going out of fashion. Fascinating sighting we had just as Buffelshoek Dam was drying out last year, and they were eating little fishes. Hello Cameron, aged just 6 years old, and what a very clever reptile question you've asked. You want to know if we get snakes that swim. Cameron, there are no swimming snakes right here, but, oh, look at those colours. But, you know, Cameron, just about all snakes can swim. So I've seen puff adders swimming, I've seen pythons swimming, we know that mambas can swim. So although they don't necessarily choose to be in the water, if they have to cross a river or if they have to get into the water for whatever reason, sometimes they swim when it's very hot because they need to stay cool, then they can swim. Just about all snakes are pretty good swimmers. But we don't have any snakes here that actually live in the water. Let me just quickly show you the fly that I think we were looking at earlier. I think it's that one there, called a fly pirate. And although it doesn't really have a distribution that covers this area, it's the only one I can find that apparently it steals, well, it's eating a termite here, it's actually stealing a termite from an ant, but it's the only one I can find that looks vaguely the same and that eats these sorts of little insects like the ants and the termites. Alrighty, good. We'll turn around from here. We're going to head down south on the western fringes of Djuma and see what we can find. In the meantime, let's go across to Pajamas and find out what she is finding in the east.
We are heading from the east across to the west, whilst James has the sort of western boundary covered. We're going to double check along the northern boundary. We've just been discussing the movements that Tingana usually follows, or the pathways that he usually follows. And whilst predicting a leopard's movements is about as successful as predicting a woman's mood from one day to another, we still have to try and guess at where he might be going. And I think that Buffelshoek cut line might be a good place to start. He very often has sort of several routes. He walks along through the centre of Djuma, or he walks along to the north of Djuma, along Buffelshoek cut line. Actually, those are pretty much the two routes he walks. It's just figuring out where he is along his journey. And while we do that, back to poor Monique in London's question about the hyena den. He wanted to know whether or not I was going to head back across there. I would very much like to, although I hear tell that it has moved at some point, or at least it hasn't been active for a while. Now, my first project, I think, tomorrow will be to see if we can't figure out where they've gone. And while we search for hyenas and leopards, James has found one of the smaller canids.
Look at that, everybody. There is a side-striped jackal, a small one. I think it's going to run off into the bushes there. A lovely sighting. We're right close to the gate and one of the houses, one of the landowners' houses. And I think what this jackal is doing is looking for probably, well, I'm sure it can smell food and things around here. Isn't that great? Oh, the usual story, Brian. I'm going to try and go backwards a little bit. We might lose picture. We're right there, Brian. Can you see anything? Let me just turn around here. We'll just try and find it again. I'm just going to call this dude. There's a guy over here who's been very patiently waiting to get past us. And every time he looks like he's going to, we find something. So we'll just let him by. There he goes. And let's see if we can find this jackal again. There, on the road. It's right in front of us. I think probably heading to Sandy Patch. Hello, James Richard. Very shameful that I cannot answer your question. Well, I can to one extent. You say, is there a Shangaan word for jackal? Yes, there is. I don't know what it is, though, which is appalling. I'm pretty sure I've heard it, but I couldn't tell you what it was. And is it the same for side stripe and blackback? No, I'm sure there are two different ones. There certainly would have been. Whether there still are or not, I don't know. Yeah, it's gone off into Sydney's dam. I will find out, James. I will find out from Herbert what a side-striped jackal is in Shitsonga or Shangaan. It's actually very shameful indeed that I don't know what that is. A domestic dog is Dana. Try and say that. Dana. Very nice, Brian. Beautiful. I think there is something at the dam there. We haven't got very far from where we last saw you, everyone. There's some hippo cavorting about there. Let's just see if we can see them. We'll quickly zoom in. Zoom. Pop. There you can see the hippo. I saw them leaping up and down in that kind of larval lake, it looks like. And Tasha, I guess you're thinking of whales and dolphins when you say, what is the maximum amount of time that a hippo can spend out of water? Tasha, they don't actually ever have to go into water. If there is no sun and if they are cool enough, then they don't actually have to go into water at all. It's not like a situation with a hippo or not a hippo, a dolphin or a whale where they'll die very quickly if they aren't in water. They don't have to go into water, and they do spend extended periods out of water, especially during drought times. So, yeah, they can spend indefinitely out of the water. I think most of the time, if they can, they'll only spend about 8 hours a day or so. All right, let's go across to Jamie, get another update from her. We're going to head south.
We're still heading, while James goes south, we are still heading north and to the west to figure out if well, basically it's just a chance for me to get reoriented. Not that I'm lost or anything like that. It doesn't take 9 days for my memory to go completely blank, but to just become reacquainted with what's out here, and at the same time provides an excellent opportunity to look for Tingana. But I was talking about, before James found that jackal, I was chatting a little bit about the spotted hyenas and the chance of finding their den. I said that I sort of zone out whenever I'm on leave, but I do keep up to date every now and again with your wonderful screenshots and such things on Facebook and other social media platforms. So I did get to see that our hyena with the brand new cubs, that you got to see both of them come out of the den site, and tiny little brown fuzzballs. So that I'm really, really excited about seeing, because we saw, before I went on leave, it was just a sort of one brief sighting of one cub's head out of the whole of the den. Obviously they're at that incredibly entertaining age where they're still curious, a little bit nervous still, but curious, and yet highly uncoordinated. Not really all that good at the whole walking thing. And it's a stage of their lives I'm hoping we can find them before they get too much older. This, I think, is a shot in the dark, quite literally. There was a bush baby in here, but it has very much disappeared. I was hoping it would start jumping a bit closer, but it's, I think, just jumped further away. And of course, back to Aaron's question, all of our nocturnal animals are exciting, and winter, midwinter, is the perfect time. If you're interested in some of the rarer, or at least shyer, creatures of the evening, these winter evenings are the perfect time to go and search for them. So I've yet to see, on my list of things to see at Djuma, I haven't seen an aardvark, admittedly ever, which is one of those bizarre things. I have yet to see a porcupine on Djuma, but we know they're here. We find their quills and their tracks all the time. Haven't seen a caracal. Otherwise, I've done pretty well on the nocturnal animal spectrum. I think I've seen most of the others. Viam and I saw a serval a couple of months ago. Seen civet, white-tailed mongoose. A water mongoose would also be really exciting, but I think most of them have now moved off away from this area and back towards where there's more permanent water sources. I've seen African wildcat, honey badgers regularly, well, sort of regularly. I haven't seen a pangolin yet, and in fact there's only been one pangolin sighting over the last few months, and that was with Brent on Cheetah Plains. So we'll have to add that to the list of things we could spot as well. And then there's the usual standard of nocturnal lions and leopards wandering about as evening falls. So, on that, we are back to Buffelshoek Dam, or at Buffelshoek Dam, just in case Tingana's decided, now that it's cool enough, now that darkness is falling, might be time to go wandering about. Nearly got lost there for a second. It's also different. Whoopsie. Here we go. While we scan the dam area and its surrounds for our leopard, Shamal raises a good point, and that is whether or not it could be Sindile's tracks, the much-loved young leopard who had some interesting times over the last few months. So Sindile, for those of you who, just to give you a brief summary, is probably one of the most famous leopards in the world. And he made him sort of shot to stardom in a very unfortunate way. He caught a stray dog that had wandered in from one of the neighboring villages that later turned out to be rabid. He was placed in quarantine for 8 months. This was around about a year old. And he was placed in quarantine for 8 months and then released with a tracking collar. And Jamal's absolutely right in that he is known as the Wanderer, and he's been released, and he's now nearly 2 years old, almost at the right dispersal age for a male leopard. And yes, he's certainly wandering. He's wandering all over the show. up and down and as far as he can go. The reason I don't think that it's Sindile, and we don't know because as far as I know we haven't received any more updates as to his whereabouts from his collar. The reason I don't think it's him is because I don't think Sindile would be marking territory at this point, and that leopard that walked through most definitely stopped at the neighboring trees and bushes to urine scent mark, because we could smell the urine. It smells, in theory, fresh leopard urine is supposed to smell like buttered popcorn. I don't think it does, but I appear to be the only person that doesn't smell it like that, so I think it's this problem with me, not anybody else's perception. Apparently leopard urine smells like buttered popcorn, but Sindile is wondering because he feels threatened, because he's scared, and he doesn't want to draw attention to himself or attract the attentions, particularly of any dominant males in this area, or in the areas that he's wandered through. The chances of him marking his territory seem relatively unlikely, and it's only at the earliest roughly around 5, usually only 6 or 7, that a leopard will start, a male leopard will start to mark his territory, or to actually mark out a territory for himself. It also is the same reason, kind of in reverse, why I don't think it's Mvula. I don't think it's Mvula. I think he's so old now, or at least at that age. He's not old, but he's at that age where he no longer, again, wants to draw attention to himself. But we will go and investigate and see if we can't solve the mystery of our leopard track once and for all before the end of the sunset safari. Let us find out what James's plans are.
Oh. I thought we had spotted something fascinating. Well, we have for the daytime, but it's a kudu, a whole herd of kudus through there, which unfortunately we can't look at because it is night time. And we don't look at diurnal animals at night, which I think Jamie explained to you. That's just because it hurts their eyes, we think, a bit more than it does the nocturnal ones. The logic behind that is not entirely clear to me, given that if you're active at night, I would imagine your eyes to be more sensitive during the darkness. Anyway, that's what we do. It's the official story, we'll stick to it. Now, Shannon in Ohio, you want to know what animals we see more in the winter time than in the summertime. You mean at night time, I'm assuming, Shannon. Not many, actually. In fact, I don't think any. I suppose we see more bush babies maybe during the winter because the foliage is that much less dense, and instead of them hopping about eating insects, they're on acacia trees eating the gum. So maybe bush babies, we see them a little bit more. Bush baby, for those of you who don't know, is basically a little primate. Looks like a koala bear, related to lemurs a little bit, or to the lorises. Yep, related to the lorises. And what else would we see more? I think that's about it. Everything else is pretty much the same. In summertime, we definitely see more chameleons than we do in the winter. And I suppose like with the bush babies, the chances of seeing something are probably greater. Something like a civet. We've had 2 civet sightings now this winter. We've had genet sightings. The chances of seeing anything in the winter time are that much higher because the foliage is that much thinner. But otherwise not, I wouldn't say. And it's interesting, you know, in the really cold mornings, like this morning, for example, we were driving about this morning, and it was supposed to be 10 degrees Celsius, and that's pretty chilly, it's about 54 Fahrenheit. We saw nothing for about an hour and a half. There was just nothing about. And the animals, I don't think, like the cold at all. And I can remember when I was a guide, taking game drives, and you know, the really cold winter's mornings, you'd find very little until the sun started to warm the earth and things just used to appear. If you were lucky enough to find a leopard or a lion in the cold of the morning, then it's great because they're often moving around as opposed to lying down doing nothing. But all the general game and the elephants and that buffalo and that sort of stuff, yeah, they generally like to be relatively warmish. So winter nights not necessarily the best time to be looking for animals. Right, we're on to the main road. We were coming down towards the western section, but then we were set upon, well, not set upon, we were blocked by that very large herd of elephants that we watched earlier. So we just let them be and came around this way. I'm surprised not to have seen a bush baby tonight. They've been all over the place. So maybe we'll be lucky on our way home. What do you think, Brian? Now this is where the civet was also seen 2 nights in a row. Seen right along here. A civet, for those of you who don't know, a member of the family Viveridae, which will be about as clear as mud. Basically similar to a genet and quite closely related to the Herpestidae, i.e. the mongoose. And some people call them civet cats. They are not cats at all. Must find out from Byron how his trip to Londolozi went. He's down there now for a month, and I know that many of you will be sad to see him go. I'm very sad to see him go. It was lovely to have here, and I'm hoping that he'll come and do a bit more time with us. And he, of course, was extremely grateful for the very warm welcome and warm response you all gave to him. So thank you very much for that. I must say it must make a huge difference when people come in here and they're new and nervous and they don't really know what to expect, and you all are so very kind to them. So thanks very much for that. We do appreciate it. Now Jamie is black screen, so I suspect that might be the last that you see of her tonight. She will be back obviously with us tomorrow. I'm just wondering, Kirsten, is that school drive going to be publicly aired? It is, isn't it? So if you feel like something different, everybody, tomorrow at 11 o'clock our time, so you can work that out whatever time you are, we're going to do just a 45-minute quick drive. You won't be able to ask questions because it's going to be for the school kids. But it might be interesting for you if you are, especially if you're in the States, where I know that early drive, it would be early morning for you rather than that very late night. So you'll get 45 minutes at a different time of the day in the middle of the winter. And you know, the midday in the middle of the winter can be a very pleasant time to be out. It's beastly in the summer, but in winter time it's very pleasant. So pop along if you want for 45 minutes from 11 o'clock to 11:45. Like I say, we're going to only take the questions from the kids, but if you want to see what this landscape looks like in the middle of the day, well, you have a rare opportunity at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. I am definitely unable to work out what times these are. Alright everybody, that's going to be us, 8 from us. Jamie is back up. Thank you very much for coming to the leopards for us. I know it was a dreadful trial for you. Thank you, Brian and Mr. Thumb, for your efforts today, and we'll hand you back to Jamie for the last minute and see you tomorrow at 06:30. Bye bye.
I've only been back a few hours and already I seem to have had a somewhat detrimental effect on poor old Wendy here. Finding out which places we can go and which places we can't is all part and parcel of the job and of live safaris out here. Nevertheless, it is truly marvelous to return once again to the African bushveld. I do miss it whenever I go on leave. It's a strange thing. Even though it's wonderful to have a holiday, it is equally marvelous coming home, and I feel very fortunate in that I can say that each and every time I come back from a holiday to be excited to head back to work and head back to home. And as we come now to the end of our sunset safari, we'll have to follow up and see if Tingana wanders about or takes the route that we expected him to. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that he will. And it sounds as though we've got exciting prospects, lions wandering about, leopards everywhere, and maybe I'll even have a chance to see Karula's now slightly larger cubs. Well, thank you, Viam, for all of your fantastic camera work. It is wonderful to see you again, as well as to the lovely ladies in Final Control, to Kirsty, Lou and Chelsea. It's great to hear your voices once again. Most importantly, thank you to all of you for your questions, comments and viewers. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow.